Without warning, a glowing spear of light pierces straight through the commander's neck from behind. After spending 10 agonizing years fighting the Empire's war, he realizes they never intended to let him go home alive. As he bleeds out in the dirt, his soul flares with a terrifying light, swearing an oath of absolute vengeance against the hypocrites who used him. But to understand how this betrayed soldier was reborn as the heir to the world's most dangerous dark magic family, we need to go back to where it all started. We kick things off with a terrifying nightmare monster covered in eyes and razor-sharp teeth. Welcome to Earth in 2045, an apocalyptic wasteland where humanity is losing a brutal war against these beasts. Soldiers are doing their absolute best to fight back, but the situation is looking completely hopeless. One poor guy gets absolutely shredded from behind by a sneaky beast, because literally nowhere is safe in this nightmare. Another soldier falls to his knees in pure horror as a giant monster towers over him. This dude is sweating bullets and realizes his time is officially up. Honestly, seeing a monster that big would make anyone want to immediately log out of life. Suddenly, a giant shadowy claw whips through the air with insane speed. But our main man is not about to let his squad get wiped out today, jumping in to block the shadow attacks. He unleashes a powerful slash that completely cuts through the enemy attack in one clean motion. These monsters are relentless though, and another hideous creature leaps forward while screeching at the top of its lungs. Out of nowhere, a massive shadowy beast rises right behind an oblivious soldier. When you think you are winning the fight, but the boss just spawns phase 2 right behind you. SFX, Vine Boom. Before the monster can even strike, our hero swings his blade in a beautiful arc and shreds the shadow beast to pieces. Another massive claw tries to flatten him, but he easily dodges the strike like it is absolutely nothing. He looks incredibly calm and composed, keeping his eyes locked on the next target like a certified badass. He pulls out a handgun and fires a bright flare right into the dark sky to signal his remaining squad. This is Han Sung, the commander of Earth's final defense force, and he is yelling at his team to keep moving forward. He casually locks and loads his massive sniper rifle because things are about to get serious. Han Sung explains that humanity has been locked in this exhausting, brutal war for decades, and after countless endless battles, only a tiny handful of human survivors are actually left standing. He looks back at his remaining squad and tells them their final goal is right before their eyes. But just as they are about to make their final stand, a strange blue glowing light starts swirling around his feet. Wait, what is happening here? This is definitely not part of the plan. Suddenly, a massive golden magic circle opens up right underneath him and catches him completely off guard. Han Sung looks down in absolute shock, wondering what on earth this glowing circle is. Before he can even react, the golden light bursts upward and completely engulfs his body. SFX, Vine Boom. His comrade yells out to him in a panic, but it is already too late as Han Sung gets pulled away. Glowing golden chains wrap tightly around him while a mysterious voice echoes in his mind. He opens his eyes to find himself surrounded by hooded figures who are cheering about successfully summoning a legendary hero. Han Sung looks down at his arms and realizes he is completely bound by glowing golden shackles. An old bald priest in golden robes steps forward to welcome him to the Empire as their grand savior. The creepy old guy smiles and asks Han Sung to defeat the Demon King to save their world, which is a pretty wild first request. This old man is giving off major shady vibes, and you just know he is up to no good. SFX, Vine Boom. Han Sung is completely dumbfounded, demanding to know what they are talking about with this Demon King nonsense. He starts shouting, asking where he is and who these people are, since he is supposed to be fighting monsters in Korea. But the priest does not care about his confusion, activating the magic chains to shock Han Sung with golden lightning. The priest smugly tells him not to resist, promising the magic will not harm him if he just obeys like a good dog. Han Sung is coughing and struggling, realizing these guys are total bullies, and this is not a civil conversation at all. The priest and a nearby knight smile, asking him once again to defeat the evil Demon King. A heavy sword is thrown onto the cold floor right in front of him, which is a terrible way to force someone into a contract. The old priest tells him that if he completes the task, they might actually send him back to his original world. Yeah, and I have a bridge to sell you. There is absolutely no way they are keeping that promise. The cultists look down at him with incredibly smug expressions, asking if he accepts their terms. Han Sung clenches his teeth and stares at the floor in pure fury because he literally has no choice. He finally looks up with an intense glare and tells them that he will do it. And just like that, Han Sung is forced to fight in a completely different world as the otherworldly hero. He stands there in full heavy armor looking like a total badass, but inside he feels completely trapped. For years, he worked endlessly, going on countless dangerous expeditions for the Empire. He was basically treated like a slave, walking around with heavy chains around his ankles. He slashed through hordes of monsters, fulfilling every single endless request the Empire threw his way. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years flew by as he spent a decade of his life fighting their war. He sacrificed his entire youth for the sole purpose of finally defeating the legendary Demon King. He finally begins to wonder if he is free to go home, dreaming of his return every single night. He floats in a dark void, desperately wishing to see his home world again. But his hopes are instantly shattered when the old priest calls out his name once again. The priest casually informs him that it is time for his next mission. Han Sung is absolutely furious, pointing out this was not part of the deal, but the priest just laughs and says the job is not done. He takes Han Sung to a bounty board, explaining they need him to eliminate some dangerous rebels opposing the Empire. The main target is a handsome blonde knight named Battle from a neighboring kingdom. The priest puts on a fake friendly smile, asking him to help them out just a little bit more. Han Sung's collar shocks him again, reminding him that a dog with a collar does not get to choose. He is forced to invade the Teutonia kingdom, leaving a massive trail of fire and destruction in his wake. He confronts Badel and stabs him straight through the chest as the knight gasps in shock. Standing over the bleeding knight in the burning ruins, Han Sung quietly apologizes and admits he had no choice. He looks incredibly guilty, repeatedly apologizing to the fallen knight. Badel looks up with a bloody smile, telling Han Sung not to apologize to him. He warns Han Sung that very soon he will also be discarded by the Empire like a broken tool. Han Sung stands in silence, trying to convince himself that it is finally over and he can go home. But suddenly, a glowing yellow spear of light pierces straight through his neck from behind. SFX, Vine, boom. A smug noble general appears right behind him, praising him for a job well done. Han Sung clutches his bleeding throat, staring back in pure hatred at Count Brandenburg. Brandenburg laughs, telling Han Sung he fought admirably as the Empire's loyal hunting dog. Han Sung realizes they never planned on letting him go home, realizing they are all just vile hypocrites. Brandenburg swings his sword to finish him off, saying a hunting dog only knows how to bite. Han Sung collapses into the dirt, bleeding out in a massive pool of his own blood. As the light leaves his eyes, he curses them all and swears he will never forget this humiliation. His body starts glowing with a mysterious blue light as he vows to make their cursed empire pay. His soul drifts away into the dark night sky, filled with absolute rage and a thirst for revenge. That very same night, Han Sung's soul is reincarnated as a newborn baby boy, and his new mother is absolutely thrilled. A beautiful blonde lady cradles him gently, introducing herself as his new mom. He looks up and sees a tall, dark-haired man standing behind her, instantly recognizing that famous face. The baby is completely shocked as he finally remembers who this man is. That man is Dupe Saxon, known across the land as the continent's absolute greatest necromancer. He can wield some of the most dangerous dark magic in existence, which is an insane plot twist. This means Han Sung has been reborn right inside the Black Tower, the Empire's main headquarters for forbidden magic. He realizes his secret artifact, the Stone of Reincarnation, actually worked. And by some absolute miracle, he has been reborn as the firstborn son of one of the Empire's most elite noble families. He smiles to himself, realizing he was born with a golden spoon in his mouth this time. He immediately starts plotting his ultimate revenge, deciding to master necromancy and destroy the Empire. He imagines himself wiping out the smug generals and priests who betrayed him in his past life. This is the ultimate villain origin story right here. They completely messed with the wrong guy. SFX, Vine, boom. But back in reality, the Duchess is starting to worry because the newborn baby is not crying at all. The worried mother asks the old nanny to check his condition more closely. Han Sung just stares deadpan, thinking to himself that tears do not come easily to a grown warrior. The nanny checks him and tells the Duchess his breathing is perfectly stable. But then she suggests that if they truly want the baby to cry, they can just slap his bottom. Before he can even react, the nanny flips him over and gives him a solid slap on the butt. Han Sung is absolutely fuming in his mind, cursing at the top of his lungs over this utter humiliation. The nanny laughs, calling him a stubborn child who clearly inherited his father's strong will. The handsome Duke steps in, telling them their son is perfectly fine and they should stop bothering him. His beautiful new mother gently pats his back to comfort him, making Han Sung freeze up completely. He is completely startled by the sudden, gentle touch. She cradles him close, looking down at him with nothing but pure love and affection. The moment the warmth of her hand touches his skin, Han Sung is deeply moved. He suddenly recalls his past life on the cold, brutal battlefields. He remembers the endless fighting, the blood, and the constant isolation he endured. He tries to remember the last time he ever felt any kind of real warmth from another person. He was always just a tool of war, left to bleed out alone while others completely turned away. He would sit in silence, watching other comrades bond while he was completely left out. But the trembling, soft hand of his new mother radiates a level of love he has never experienced in his entire life. Han Sung, who had not shed a single tear since he was a grown man, finally loses his composure and starts crying like a real baby. 8 years have already passed since our boy was reborn as young Master Dale Saxon, and his parents are casually relaxing in bed. His mother Elena asks if Dale is still reading, noting the kid has literally never put a book down since he was 4. Duke Alan smugly replies that Dale clearly takes after his genius father, but Elena quickly reminds him about their strict promise. Alan instantly remembers the oath he swore to never teach his son any dark magic or necromancy. Elena looks incredibly serious, warning him not to forget it, and the Duke promises he prepared a totally safe birthday gift instead. But before he can explain what it is, they hear a sudden noise outside their room. A loud, frantic knocking echoes on their door in the middle of the night, prompting the Duke to demand who is there. A completely panicked maid bursts in, trembling as she stammers that something terrible is happening to young Master Dale. The parents are absolutely shocked, instantly jumping out of bed to see what is going on. SFX, Vine Boom. They rush over to find Dale's study completely covered in a violent storm of blue lightning and raw magical energy. Duke Alan steps forward, instantly sensing the incredible density of raw mana lingering in the air. He is completely stunned, realizing his 8-year-old son somehow released a massive wave of raw mana all on his own. An 8-year-old kid casually causing a localized magical storm in his bedroom is definitely not normal. The Duke stares at Dale with an intense, almost terrifying look, demanding to know if he caused this. Dale realizes he accidentally fell asleep and let his powers slip, sweating nervously as he tries to come up with an excuse. He knows that if he does not answer carefully, his parents are going to suspect he is hiding something massive. But out of nowhere, the Duke's serious expression completely melts away as he smiles and praises Dale as a true genius. He gently pats his son on the head, incredibly proud of the boy's insane natural talent. The Duke silently laments that he cannot teach Dale necromancy, while Dale is secretly disappointed he cannot learn it yet. Elena quickly orders the servants to clean up the mess and tells Dale to head back to bed. Dale walks away holding his book, leaving the Duke deeply impressed by his son's magical potential. Alan smiles, deciding he has finally found the absolute perfect birthday gift for his son. The story then skips forward to a lavish ballroom where the elite nobility has gathered to celebrate Dale's 8th birthday. The banquet hall is packed with nobles gossiping about how this is the biggest celebration the duchy has seen in years. The guests look around eagerly, wondering when the young master is finally going to make his grand appearance. Up on the 2nd floor, Dale is quietly looking down at the noisy crowd, feeling absolutely zero excitement. He sighs, thinking about how exhausting it is to have all these strangers gathering just for him. He finds the warm, noble treatment incredibly awkward since he was treated like a cold tool in his past life. His mind drifts back to the incident in the study, realizing remembering his past life made his mana go wild. He looks at his book, thinking it would be a massive tragedy to waste this body's incredible talent by ignoring necromancy. He wonders how he can convince his father to teach him the dark arts instead of whatever gift he prepared. But he quickly dismisses the idea just as his mother approaches him. Elena wishes him a happy birthday, revealing she brought a very special guest to meet him. Dale looks at the mysterious hooded figure standing behind his mother, wondering who on earth this is. Elena proudly introduces the guest as a powerful elder from the prestigious Blue Magic Tower. She is Sephia, an incredibly powerful demon widely known as a master of water attribute magic. Sephia pulls back her hood to reveal a beautiful elf with long blue hair, smiling as she welcomes her new student. Getting a legendary elf magic elder as your private tutor at age 8 is a massive flex. His mother happily announces that Sephia is going to be his personal magic teacher, completely catching Dale off guard. He realizes his mother specifically chose a water magic specialist to keep him far away from the dark arts. Sephia steps forward, politely asking to speak with Dale privately to get to know him better. They take a quiet walk out into a beautiful, snow-covered forest. Out of nowhere, Sephia looks back and asks if Dale is disappointed she is only allowed to teach him water magic. Dale is completely startled when Sephia smiles slyly, openly stating she knows he actually wants to learn necromancy. Sephia explains that the strict terms of his parents' marriage vow are famous across the entire empire. She explains that Alan promised to never pass his dark arts onto their children to ease Elena's worries. She notes that while learning dark magic is difficult right now, She's completely willing to help him persuade his mother. She looks at Dale with a knowing smile, asking if he is willing to trust her guidance. Dale looks at her with deep suspicion, asking why a nature-loving elf would ever support forbidden necromancy. Sephia just bursts out laughing, finding his serious questions incredibly amusing. She asks him if holy priests resurrecting the dying follow the laws of nature, pointing out both look exactly the same to her. Dale is highly impressed, realizing Sephia might actually make a fantastic master. Sephia decides it is time to start their first official lesson, telling him their first goal is to complete his first mana circle. Dale thinks this is absolutely perfect since advanced spells require at least a basic first circle. He places his hand over his heart, mentally preparing himself to begin the training. He notes this fantasy world is completely different from Earth because the atmosphere is overflowing with pure mana. But unless you are a legendary dragon, you cannot handle raw mana directly without a filter. Trying to absorb it directly will literally destroy you from the inside out. He explains, this is exactly why humans need a mana heart circle to safely process the energy. You have to gather the scattered fragments of mana around your heart and keep them rotating steadily. He starts channeling the energy, carving a safe path for mana to flow directly into his heart. Sephia watches him, instructing him to take his time and carefully rotate the mana. She tells him this process usually takes an entire month of intense focus, so there is no need to rush. But before she can even finish her sentence, Dale casually holds out his hands and reveals he already finished it. Sephia completely freezes, staring at him with a look of absolute jaw-dropping disbelief. SFX Vine Boom. She is completely dumbfounded, wondering if this kid is some kind of monster prodigy to form a circle in literal minutes. Dale stands there calmly, surrounded by a massive vortex of glowing blue mana crackling around him. Sephia tries to keep her cool, nervously asking if he can release the channeled mana through his new circle. Dale politely nods and tells his master he will give it a try. A massive surge of blue lightning energy starts gathering around his hand with terrifying speed. He remembers that in his past life, he could only use basic battle spells carved onto his skin. But this time is completely different because he inherited the incredible magical talent of the Duke himself. He focuses deeply, guiding the raw mana straight to his fingertips to form a weapon. He channels his past life's determination, preparing to unleash an attack of absolute precision. A massive, razor-sharp crystal of solid blue ice suddenly forms right above his outstretched hand. Sephia's jaw drops as she watches him effortlessly crystallize the raw mana into a flawless ice bolt. Dale stands in the snowy clearing, looking incredibly calm as the massive spell hovers right in front of him. With a simple gesture, the giant ice lance shoots forward like a high-speed railgun. The projectile blasts through the dense forest, completely vaporizing everything in its direct path. A massive explosion of ice and frost erupts, sending a giant shockwave through the entire area. The forest is completely devastated, leaving behind a frozen wasteland of shattered trees and deep craters. Sephia is left completely speechless, staring at the sheer destruction and noting how lethal the ice bolt was. She realizes this insane level of magical precision is something an 8-year-old child should not be physically capable of. Dale just turns back to her with a sweet, innocent smile, leaving Sephia wondering what kind of terrifying monster she just took on as a student. Sephia is sitting in the snow, staring at the absolute devastation created by her 8-year-old student in pure bewilderment. She realizes Dale actually managed to perfectly absorb all the ambient cold around him to fuel that spell. Dale walks over and innocently asks his master if he did something wrong since she is completely silent. She remains dead silent, desperately trying to process the sheer absurdity of what she just witnessed. She thinks about the absolute complexity of the magic formula he just executed, with perfect acceleration and congestion. The fact that a kid did this without any formal training is genuinely mind-blowing. When the student is so overpowered that the legendary master starts reconsidering her entire career path, Sephia quickly brushes it off, telling Dale she now fully understands why Lord Noir was so hesitant. Later on, Sephia meets privately with Duke Alan, who looks extremely surprised she is hesitating to teach his son. Alan points out that since Dale reached his first circle in minutes, she should definitely continue. Sephia drops a massive truth bomb, telling him Dale actually cast a flawless, highly lethal spell on the spot. She explains it is almost impossible to believe a child cast a military-grade spell so perfectly. She warns the Duke that his young son is incredibly talented, but specifically talented at killing. SFX Vine Boom. Duke Alan sits in deep contemplation, listening closely to her serious warnings about his son's dark potential. Sephia explains that she feels a strong urge to guide him down the right path herself. A visual shows Dale smiling innocently, looking completely pure despite his hidden lethal talents. Alan agrees that in that case, there is absolutely no reason to decline her tutoring. But secretly, the Duke is sweating bullets, realizing Dale's natural instinct is already driving him toward dark magic. Sephia notes that she respects the romantic promise the Duke made to Elena, but she points out that parents do not have the right to completely decide a child's future when they have such terrifying talent. Meanwhile, Dale is hiding around the corner, desperately trying to eavesdrop on their conversation. Dale sits on the floor looking completely defeated, grumbling that they must be talking about him. Sephia looks back, still completely shocked by Dale's overwhelming power. Dale walks away, resolving to put a lot more effort into controlling his immense power. Suddenly, someone calls out his name, startling him out of his thoughts. Dale looks up and smiles warmly as he recognizes a familiar face approaching. He happily calls out to his uncle Helmet, asking him what he is doing back at the mansion. Helmet stands before him in heavy knight armor, and Dale asks where he has been all this time. Helmet laughs, explaining he was away, fulfilling his knightly duty of protecting the family. He picks Dale up in a warm embrace, joking about how he was busy defeating scary monsters for his young lord. Dale looks at him with a knowing smile, asking if he was actually fighting down in the dangerous dungeons. As Dale looks at him, he starts explaining how the dungeons in this world actually work. He notes that the emergence of dungeons and deadly monsters is a highly critical matter for any territory. Ever since the Demon King was alive, monsters have caused massive destruction across the civilian areas. And the situation in their duchy is several times more severe, all because of Dale's past life. He explains that after his past self defeated the Demon King, the Empire forced Duke Saxon to take over the Demon King's territory. The Duke was basically forced to pacify the region by continuously fighting off wild monsters. Dale looks slightly annoyed, thinking this is basically just the Empire dumping their leftovers on his family. Dale tells Helmet to watch out for himself, and the knight smiles, asking if the young lord is actually worried about him. Suddenly, Dale notices his father approaching them down the grand hallway. Helmet stands at attention, saluting Duke Alan and thanking him for his hard work in the recent raids. His mother Elena also arrives, asking what everyone is doing gathered in the hallway. Elena smiles happily, telling Dale she heard he already reached his first magic circle. She wraps her arms around him, telling him how incredibly proud she is of his lightning-fast progress. She suggests that if Dale wants any special birthday gift, he should ask his father right now. Dale hesitates, wondering if asking to learn necromancy right now would make him look way too suspicious. So instead, Dale looks up with a completely innocent face and loudly declares that he wants a little sister. SFX, Vine Boom. His parents freeze in absolute shock, while the nearby knight captain struggles to hold back a massive laugh. Dale really knows how to deflect a serious conversation with absolute style. Later that night, the beautiful moon shines brightly over the massive castle. Dale is lying in bed, sighing about how exhausting it is to act like a childish kid at his actual mental age. He yawns, realizing that using that high-level magic earlier took a massive toll on his young body. As he closes his eyes, he suddenly experiences a terrifying, vivid nightmare. In his dream, the smug General Brandenburg appears, mockingly welcoming him back and calling him by his old name. Brandenburg holds him close, whispering in a creepy voice that it is funny how easily people grow soft. The general laughs maniacally, asking if he forgot his revenge just because he has loving parents now. The general's twisted face looms over him, promising that the Empire's forces will eventually hunt him down. Dale instantly snaps awake, gasping for air as a violent surge of blue mana starts swirling around his chest. He clutches his chest in absolute agony, feeling like his heart is literally about to explode. He looks around his bedroom, wondering in sheer panic if this is the legendary mana rampage. He stumbles out of bed, cursing the Empire and grumbling that they refuse to let him go even in his dreams. He tries to walk out of his room, desperately seeking help as the magical energy rages out of control. He clutches his chest as the painful mana spikes continue to get worse. Suddenly, Sephia appears right in front of him, noticing her young student is in highly dangerous trouble. She approaches him, commenting on how talented he is to experience a full mana rampage at his age. Dale looks at her helplessly as the swirling blue energy continues to flare up. Sephia places her hand near his chest, focusing her own calm energy to soothe the rampant mana. She explains that once malice and anger take over a child's magic, the damage becomes completely irreversible. Within moments, the violent storm of energy fades away, and Dale gasps as the painful rampage ends. Dale looks up at his teacher, panting heavily and thanking her for saving his life. Sephia looks at him with a deeply serious expression, explaining that every magician has a unique individuality. She reveals that Dale's unique magical talent is specifically suited for taking away other people's lives. She warns him that it is an incredibly dangerous talent to possess. She then pulls out a mysterious dark book, saying that is exactly why she is glad to be his teacher. Dale is completely stunned, staring at the glowing book as Sophia smiles warmly at him. She gently wishes him a happy birthday, handing him the exact dark magic tome he has been desperately wishing for. Dale is deeply moved, impulsively jumping forward to give his new master a tight, grateful hug. A few days later, the sun is shining brightly over the snowy northern plains where Dale's next phase of training is about to begin. Dale stands beside Sophia, looking a bit confused as they spot a small wild rabbit sitting nearby. His master confirms they are going to use the rabbit, telling him to recall the times he went hunting with his father. Dale nods obediently, completely ready to follow her instructions. Sophia unleashes a rapid ice magic attack, instantly ending the wild rabbit's life on the spot. She asks Dale if he has any idea why the same spell can look completely different depending on the caster. Dale admits he does not know, and Sophia explains that magic is a direct mirror reflecting the caster's inner mind. A massive pool of blood stains the snow as she tells him, magic always materializes whatever lies deep within his heart. Sophia explains that terms like firewall are merely simple stepping stones of imagination. She explains that magic inevitably reveals the landscape of your inner self through the mana you release. Dale listens quietly, reflecting on his own highly destructive nature. She notes that even the magic taught in official towers is heavily influenced by their core philosophies. She explains the Red Magic Tower highly values order achieved through raw, overwhelming strength. Each magic tower projects its core philosophy directly into the physical form of their magic. Meanwhile, the Blue Magic Tower values order achieved through absolute harmony and balance. She goes on to explain how these different core beliefs shape their entire magic systems. She gives him a warm smile, realizing she might be talking about things that are way too advanced for an 8-year-old. Dale just looks up with a cute, puzzled expression, playing the role of an innocent kid perfectly. Sophia then transitions to the actual lesson, explaining that the most basic form of necromancy is simply raising a zombie. She explains it is the delicate art of animating a dead corpse using mana strings to control its movements. A visual shows Dale's dark past self explaining how you must carefully tie your mana threads directly to the target. Sophia watches in complete awe as Dale effortlessly resurrects the dead rabbit on his very first try. Dale smiles confidently, telling his master that he is absolutely ready. He instantly starts channeling his water magic, preparing to cast frozen armor around his new zombie. His eyes glow with a brilliant blue light as he concentrates his mana. The magic activates with a loud crackling sound, wrapping the zombie rabbit in dense, solid ice. The resurrected rabbit is now covered in sharp, defensive ice crystals, looking like a miniature frozen tank. Sophia is highly impressed, but decides it is time to test the actual defense of the frozen armor. She channels her own magic and fires a rapid ice bolt straight at the armored rabbit. The projectile impacts the frozen armor with a massive crash, sending ice shards flying everywhere. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale cheers happily, celebrating the fact that his defensive armor successfully blocked his master's direct attack. Sophia smiles warmly, praising his excellent work and acknowledging his incredible talent. She notices that Dale seems to have something else on his mind, asking if there is something specific he wants. Dale looks up with a determined expression, confirming he does indeed have a request. He politely asks if she can instruct him on how to better utilize his water attribute magic as well. Sophia looks at him with a sly, knowing smirk on her face. You just know she is highly amused by his endless ambition, but she flatly refuses, completely catching Dale off guard. She explains that what he performed today was just a very basic introductory form of water magic. She notes that water magic demands incredibly deep insight and higher levels of understanding as it develops. She explains that for most beginners, even mastering a single type of magic is an incredibly difficult task. A dual mage who can handle two entirely different types of magic simultaneously is extremely rare. She tells him that trying to master both at his age is nearly impossible, viewing it as excessive ambition. Dale is completely stunned, asking her to pardon him as his anger starts to flare up. He thinks to himself that after everything he has shown her, she still believes he is not good enough. He looks down in frustration, remembering how she promised they would find their path forward together. Sophia casually ends the lesson for today, leaving Dale standing alone in the snow, absolutely seething with silent fury. Telling a legendary reincarnated hero that he lacks the talent to handle basic magic is a massive mistake. Later that night, Dale is back inside his dimly lit study room, surrounded by massive stacks of ancient books. He is completely exhausted but determined, thinking there is absolutely nothing he cannot achieve on his own. He clenches his fists, resolving to prove himself so thoroughly that Sefia will have no choice but to teach him everything. He stays up the entire night, aggressively practicing his mana rotation and pushing his young body to the absolute limit. The next morning, Dale has massive dark circles under his eyes, looking completely sleep-deprived as Sefia calls his name. Sefia looks at him with deep concern, asking if he is all right, since he looks like he did not sleep at all. Dale puts on a tired smile, telling his master he is fine and just stayed up to prepare something special. Sefia tells him not to overexert himself, but Dale immediately steps forward and starts channeling his magic. He raises his hand, and a massive glowing purple magic circle appears as he targets a wild beast carcass. The beast carcass is instantly wrapped in a thick, spike-covered layer of frozen armor. Sefia is highly impressed, telling him he mastered the spell, but suddenly notices something strange. The frozen armor starts to crack and glow with an intense, unstable purple energy. Sefia looks on in absolute shock as she realizes the ice armor is about to violently explode. The frozen beast suddenly erupts in a massive explosion of sharp ice shards, but the destruction does not stop there. Out of the smoke, the resurrected beast stands up, completely engulfed in a terrifying dark purple aura. The zombie beast eyes glow red as it channels a massive sphere of dark energy. The beast releases a devastating blast of combined dark and ice magic, completely obliterating the surrounding forest. The sheer force of the explosion sends a massive shockwave of wind and frost through the entire clearing. Sefia is completely stunned, her defensive magic barely shielding her as she stares at the raw power of the blast. She looks at the massive crater, unable to believe the level of destructive power her young student just unleashed. She stands there in absolute silence, completely speechless at Dale's terrifying capabilities. Dale calmly explains that he combined corpse explosion and ice explosion, successfully merging water and dark attributes into one single spell. He looks up at her with a smug, innocent smile, asking his master if he can officially count as a dual mage now. The massive ice explosion clears out, revealing a giant frozen crater where the target once stood. Sefia is sweating bullets, staring at the crater in absolute disbelief and noting she has never seen this kind of magic before. She realizes that by mixing corpse explosion and ice explosion, the magic attained an insanely massive area of effect. And it did not even end there, as the high-speed ice and bone fragments were blasted outward like lethal blades. Sefia is completely creeped out, thinking this magic is solely designed to kill, almost like a weapon created by a seasoned warrior. She wonders what kind of dark mental image an 8-year-old child could possibly possess to formulate such a ruthless attack. Dale looks back at her with wide, innocent blue eyes, completely unaware of how much he just terrified his legendary master. Suddenly, they hear horses galloping in the distance as Dale excitedly calls out to his Uncle Helmet. Helmet rides up on a beautiful white horse, waving cheerfully as he greets young Master Dale and Lady Sefia. Dale runs up to him, asking if they just returned from raiding another monster dungeon. Helmet confirms they just finished subduing a small group of wild monsters, noting the Black Cavalry had to put in some serious work. Meet the Black Cavalry, a highly feared elite force of the dukedom who are widely respected across the land. Wielding massive lances covered in glowing purple aura, they are the unrivaled elite cavalry of the Saxon dukedom. And to add to their formidable strength, their captain is none other than Sir Helmet himself. Helmet is widely renowned as one of the 7 legendary swordmasters of the entire continent. Having one of the strongest swordmasters on the continent as your uncle is an absolute cheat code. Dale clasps his hands together, cutely asking his uncle if he forgot his promise to teach him some sword techniques. Helmet laughs heartily, reassuring the young lord that he of course has not forgotten his promise. The captain bids them farewell, telling Dale not to stay out in the cold for too long as they prepare to ride back. Sefia watches them leave, sighing as she tells Dale it is time for them to head back to the castle too. Later that night inside the lavish drawing room of the castle, Sefia pours herself a warm cup of tea. She meets with Duke Alan and Elena, calmly explaining that young Master Dale already completed his first circle in both water and dark magic. The Duke looks surprised, reminding Sefia they specifically requested her to teach him water magic only. Sefia looks at them with a deeply serious expression, confirming she was indeed told to only teach him water magic. But she explains that as his mentor, she wanted to teach him whatever he truly wished to learn, and Dale wanted to learn dark magic. She notes that if Dale wishes for it, she has absolutely no intention of holding back his immense potential. Elena looks incredibly worried, politely asking Sefia to please keep teaching him water magic instead. Sefia politely bows, promising to take excellent care of the young lord from now on. She then turns and walks out of the room, leaving the parents alone to discuss the situation. Cephia smiles to herself as she walks down the hallway, silently apologizing to Lord Noir for breaking her promise. Back in the room, Elena sighs in amazement, commentating that their child is truly extraordinary to become a dual mage so young. The Duke looks down, admitting that while Dale scares him from time to time, he is incredibly proud of his son's capabilities. He tells Elena he wants to teach Dale necromancy himself, hoping to give his son the strength to withstand the heavy duties of a future lord. A visual shows Dale standing over a chessboard, playing with the lives of his enemies like a true mastermind. Duke Alan explains that as Dale's father, he wants his son to fully inherit his legendary dark legacy. He looks deeply remorseful, sincerely apologizing to Elena for breaking his promise to keep Dale away from dark magic. He notes that public perception of necromancy is still extremely poor, with many people fearing it as the magic of death. He explains that is why he wanted to dissuade Dale from learning it, but realizes his son is destined for the dark arts. Elena hugs him gently, asking if he is okay and showing her absolute unconditional support. Alan holds her close, thanking her for her understanding and warmth. The Duke looks incredibly determined, swearing he will personally train their son to become the absolute best necromancer. Dale stands inside the magic workshop located deep underground, realizing his father brought him here immediately after seeing his basic spell. The underground workshop looks incredibly creepy, filled with ancient skulls, magical circles, and glowing purple artifacts. The Duke clicks his tongue, telling Dale that as long as he is teaching him, he should not even think about using such basic spells. He steps forward with a terrifying dark aura, warning Dale that they are about to begin the real class now. He reveals they are going to start by memorizing the complete bone and muscle structures of all known life forms. Dale stands before a massive stack of textbooks, looking completely overwhelmed as his father asks if he understands. When you thought you were going to raise armies of the dead, but your dad immediately hits you with medical school homework. SFX, Vine Boom. For the next several weeks, Dale is forced to study endlessly, memorizing every single detail of the highly advanced textbooks. After finally completing all the basics, the Duke places a massive locked tome on the desk, allowing Dale to finally move on to practical magic. Alan smiles warmly, telling his son that they are officially beginning the real training session now. But as Dale looks at the floor, he gasps in shock, realizing what his father has prepared for him. Sitting on the cold stone floor right in front of them is the fresh corpse of a wild goblin. The Duke looks at him with a smug grin, noting that Dale seems to be quite perplexed by the target. He explains that while an untrained warlock can only make a simple zombie, a skilled individual can make a simple soldier into a death knight. He challenges Dale, asking him how he plans to move this bipedal creature. Dale steps forward, a sweat drop running down his face as he prepares to channel his dark mana strings. He concentrates deeply, realizing this is going to be a lot harder than the small rabbit he raised earlier. He notes that a goblin is much harder to control because it is bipedal and requires multiple mana strings. He attaches his glowing purple mana threads to the goblin's limbs, trying to force the creature to stand up. But the goblin's body immediately stiffens up, its joints refusing to bend properly as Dale struggles to maintain control. He realizes he made a massive mistake by trying to use post-mortem rigidity to increase its defense, making the muscles too stiff. The Duke steps in, telling him that while hardening the body was a good idea, it has a bad side effect. He shows Dale a glowing purple visual of a zombie's muscle structure, explaining there is absolutely no need to protect the organs of a creature that is already dead. With a simple wave of his hand, the Duke easily takes control of the goblin, making it move with fluid, lifelike movements. He looks at Dale with a chilling smile, telling him a true master must completely understand the target's structure and alter it to their needs. Dale is completely awestruck, staring at his father in absolute amazement at the level of mastery. The Duke explains that this level of absolute, ruthless control over the dead is the true foundation of black magic. Dale looks up at his father, deeply moved and asking him to teach him the true mindset of the Noir Magic Tower. The Duke smiles proudly, kneeling down and placing his hand on Dale's shoulder. He looks at his son with a deeply serious expression, telling him the absolute truth always exists within death. He explains they must fully understand the weight of life to reach the ultimate truth. As the Duke speaks, Dale is suddenly hit with a violent, terrifying flashback of his past life as the hero Han Sung. He remembers standing on a burning, bloody battlefield, holding his sword as a defeated enemy soldier begged for his life. He remembers raising his blood-stained blade, completely ignoring the soldier's desperate pleas for mercy. He remembers the cold, ruthless look on his own face as he executed the defenseless enemy in the name of the Empire. The flashback ends, and the Duke asks Dale if he is all right, noticing the boy has gone completely pale. Dale stands there trembling, the memories of his past sins weighing heavily on his young mind. He clenches his fists, looking down and quietly telling his father that he is completely fine. As his shadow stretches across the dark floor, he resolves to keep moving forward, determined to use this dark power to destroy the Empire once and for all. As Dale's magic training progresses, the rumor that Duke Saxon is actively teaching his son dark magic starts spreading across the Empire. The Duke breaking his marriage vow to Elena has caused an absolute massive ruckus among the high nobility, and as for the very kid who caused the breaking of that vow, he has garnered the intense attention of everyone in the Empire. They are all keeping their eyes locked directly on him, watching his every move to see if he lives up to his father's infamy. A few weeks later, Dale is out on the training grounds, focusing intensely on his physical training. He is practicing his swordsmanship, swinging a heavy wooden training sword with incredible speed and power. He spars with his uncle Helmet, clashing wooden swords together as their blades make loud, sharp impacts. Dale lunges forward, executing a rapid, low-sweep attack to try and catch the legendary swordmaster off guard. But Helmet easily blocks the strike, smiling warmly as he matches his young nephew's speed. The sheer force of their clash sends a shockwave of wind through the training ground as both fighters push back. Dale leaps high into the air, bringing his wooden sword down with a powerful, crushing overhead strike. The wooden blade shatters completely upon impact, leaving Helmet staring at him in complete, wide-eyed shock. Helmet's sword is knocked clean out of his hand, flying through the air and landing deep in the snow. Helmet chuckles, telling Dale his performance was not bad at all as they both pant from exhaustion. Dale smiles innocently, pointing out there is absolutely no way a legendary knight like him would accidentally drop his sword unless he let him win. Helmet denies it, admitting Dale is using advanced sword techniques that normal people would have died trying to block. Dale looks at his calloused hands, realizing his swordsmanship is so excellent that it almost feels like a tragedy to remain solely as a mage. Helmet approaches him, advising him that mages always require escort knights by their side to protect them. He tells Dale there is really no need to train his physical body this hard when he is already a magic prodigy. He gently kneels down, advising Dale not to push himself to the point of injury. Dale looks at him, stating there is, of course, a very important reason why he is doing this. He explains it would not look cool for the Duke's son to rely solely on guards or defensive magic to survive. Besides, he thinks to himself how he could ever pass up a golden chance to learn legendary swordsmanship directly from one of the 7 swordmasters. Helmet bursts into roaring laughter, calling it a magnificent, proud answer. Dale really knows exactly what to say to make his teacher proud. Suddenly, they hear gentle footsteps approaching them from the castle entrance. Dale looks up happily, calling out to his mother Elena, who just walked outside. Elena smiles warmly, asking them what brings them out here in the freezing cold. She reveals she has some highly exciting news to share with them today. She asks Dale if he remembers the very special birthday present he asked for recently. Dale thinks back to his birthday party, instantly remembering his cheeky request. He literally asked for a little sister just to deflect a conversation about dark magic. SFX, Vine Boom. Elena happily smiles, telling Dale he is officially going to have to take excellent care of his new young sibling. Dale is absolutely thrilled, clasping his hands together in pure joy. The story skips forward 10 months later, inside the Duchess's private chambers. Elena is lying in bed, cradling a beautiful newborn baby girl. Dale gently reaches out, poking the baby's soft cheek, and thinking how unreal it feels to actually have a little sister now. He stares at her in complete awe, muttering that she is so incredibly cute. The Duke smiles, asking Dale if he would like to hold his new little sister. Elena gently places the baby in Dale's arms, telling him not to be shy because holding a baby is actually not that hard. Dale holds her close, staring down at her face in absolute silence. The baby smiles happily in his arms, looking completely content and peaceful. Dale cradles her carefully, feeling a sudden wave of genuine warmth and love. The Duke smiles at them, asking Dale how he feels holding his new sibling. Dale looks up at his father, commenting that she's incredibly light as a feather. But then he adds that she also feels incredibly heavy, staring down at her with a deeply serious expression. The Duke smiles warmly, deeply understanding exactly what his son means by those words. He places his hand on Dale's shoulder, telling him that this weight is the true weight of life. He advises Dale to never forget this feeling as long as he lives. He then reminds Dale it is officially time for his next magic lesson with Master Sephia. Back in the snowy forest, Sephia stands before Dale, announcing that today's lesson is going to be real combat practice. Dale looks at her, asking if he is really allowed to fight seriously and use his full strength. He activates his magic circle, telling her he understands as Sephia tells him not to hesitate. He immediately channels his ice magic, unleashing a rapid barrage of sharp ice shards straight at her. But Sephia easily deflects the attack, commenting that his first strike was way too slow. She dodges another incoming projectile, teasing him and asking if this is really the best he can do. She smiles playfully, asking him if a student is really supposed to go this easy on his own master. Dale stands in the snow, realizing his master's speed is on a completely different level. Sephia quickly launches a counterattack, telling him to put up a defensive barrier as fast as he can. A massive surge of ice energy explodes right where Dale is standing, completely engulfing the area. Dale barely manages to block the strike, coughing from the impact, and realizing he would have been seriously hurt if he had not reacted in time. Sephia smiles proudly, noting he managed to form solid ice armor in that split second, calling his reaction speed highly impressive. Dale stands up, brushing off the ice shards and preparing to launch his next spell. Sephia praises his resilience, challenging him to come at her again with everything he has. Dale channels his mana, executing a highly complex ice magic formula with incredible precision. A massive, thick wall of solid ice instantly rises out of the snow, completely blocking Sephia's line of sight. Sephia is completely caught off guard, wondering why on earth he would cast a purely defensive ice wall in the middle of an offensive battle. She notes that by enhancing the mana structure, Dale has dramatically increased the density of the ice. She stares at the massive wall, wondering if Dale simply needs a quick break after her last heavy attack. But suddenly, she hears a strange, low, crackling sound coming from the ice wall. She realizes too late that Dale actually cast a frost explosion fragmentation formula on the wall itself. Dale stands behind the wall with glowing blue eyes, quietly muttering the command to detonate. A massive, blinding sphere of light engulfs the ice wall as the spell activates. Sephia's eyes widen in sheer horror as she realizes Dale basically created a giant, magical ice grenade. The massive ice wall explodes in a devastating blast, sending thousands of sharp, lethal ice fragments flying straight at her at bullet speed. Dale's massive ice wall grenade explodes with a deafening blast, completely covering the forest in thick, heavy frost. Dale thinks about the incantation, realizing it condensed the sturdy ice wall even further, practically turning it into a lethal grenade. The smoke slowly begins to clear, and Dale looks around to see if his master managed to block the attack. He calls out to Sephia, looking a bit worried he might have gone a little too far with his full strength. Sephia is shown sitting on the ground with a massive wound on her cheek, looking completely stunned by the attack. But suddenly, she appears right behind him, asking if he called her and completely startling the young lord. Dale sighs in relief, telling her she startled him, but Sephia casually points out her wounded version was actually just an illusion. Sephia smiles warmly, praising his incredibly impressive technique. She admits she never imagined a warlock who has not even reached the first circle would be capable of wounding an elder of the magic tower. Dale looks down guilty, apologizing and explaining he never actually meant to hurt his master. Sephia tells him she knows, adding she is actually deeply grateful for the challenge today. She explains his willingness to fight seriously means he fully trusted her enough to use his complete strength. She kneels down to his level, telling him that his incredible progress makes her prouder than words can express. She gently pats him on the head, asking how he even came up with such an extraordinary spell formula. Dale smiles warmly, thanking her and saying it is all because of what she taught him. Honestly, these two have the most wholesome master and student dynamic ever. The story then transitions to Sephia meeting with Duke Alan, who looks intensely at Sephia's face. Alan asks Sephia why she has a fresh wound on her cheek. Sephia explains she got it while teaching the young master, noting his formula was extraordinarily sharp. The Duke looks deeply troubled, telling Sephia he is always incredibly indebted to her for her dedication. Sephia dismisses his worries, saying teaching a talented student like Dale is a massive joy for her as well. But the Duke's expression turns incredibly serious as he brings up a report of dangerous orcs crossing into their territory. The Duke reveals that despite the danger, he intends to send young Master Dale into this upcoming battle. Sephia looks completely shocked, protesting that young Master Dale is only 8 years old and definitely not ready for real combat yet. The Duke calms her down, explaining Dale will not be expected to fight on the dangerous front lines. But he points out defending the territory is the duty of House Saxon, and Dale must understand that heavy responsibility. He stands up, a dark and terrifying purple aura swirling all around him as he declares, Dale is no exception to this rule. Sephia relents, looking down and asking what the Duke needs her to do. Alan reveals his ultimate plan, announcing he will be entrusting Dale with his personal artifact. He tells her he wants her to carefully guide Dale until he learns to fully control its immense power. The story explains that an artifact is an object imbued with immense power and will. Because of their incredible strength, they can only be used by offering either your own mana or your actual life itself as payment. In some cases, Using an artifact can even prove to be completely fatal for the user. Later on, the Duke and Sephia lead Dale down the grand hallways toward the family's secret vault. Duke Alan stands before a massive, heavily guarded door, explaining, House Saxon has long mastered the art of handling these dangerous powers. He turns to Dale, announcing that as the Duke's heir, he must officially prepare for the upcoming battle. Dale is absolutely thrilled, and his eyes light up as he celebrates the fact that he is finally going to experience real combat. The heavy vault door slowly creaks open, revealing a glittering array of legendary weapons and artifacts. The Duke tells Dale he must first learn how to control the power of darkness their family wields. Dale is completely awestruck, staring at the legendary items on display and commenting on the intense mana radiating from them. The Duke warns him every single one of these items contains immense power, ordering him not to touch anything recklessly. But before Alan can even finish his warning, he turns around to find Dale has already wandered off. The Duke and Sephia look around the massive vault in complete confusion, wondering where the boy went. Meanwhile, Dale is walking down a separate aisle of the vault, searching for an artifact that perfectly suits his unique needs. Suddenly, a glowing gold shield on the wall starts speaking directly to his mind, telling him it can feel his deep hatred and resentment. Dozens of dark artifacts start whispering to him, desperately begging him to choose them so they can reach new heights of destruction together. Dale looks at them calmly, realizing these dark artifacts are strongly resonating with his lingering resentment toward the Empire. He smiles to himself, thinking this level of power is still not enough, and he needs something far stronger. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto a mysterious black cloak hanging on a display stand. He walks over to it, wondering what this shadow cloak is. The story explains that during the Heroes era, Duke Berta of the Demon King's army used this top-grade artifact to give form to shadows, making him a terrifying opponent. Dale decides to try it on immediately, draping the dark cloak over his shoulders. Suddenly, Sephia and the Duke find him, and Alan calls out his name in sheer panic. The dark cloak suddenly unleashes a violent storm of black shadow energy, completely engulfing Dale. A terrifying shadow creature rises from the cloak, whispering that it is hungry and wants to devour his soul. The story explains that to truly control the shadow creature, the host must make it completely submit. Dale stands in the center of the dark vortex, looking incredibly calm as he prepares to tame the beast. The shadow beast screeches in rage, wrapping around him as Sephia and the Duke watch in absolute horror. Elena's husband looks on with wide, panicked eyes, realizing how dangerous the situation is. A massive sphere of dark energy completely covers Dale, hiding him from view. Sephia panics, warning the Duke that if this continues, Dale will lose his sanity and be completely devoured by the shadow creature. The Duke steps forward, shouting, they have to pull Dale out of the shadow sphere by force. Sephia prepares her magic, ready to blast the dark energy away before it is too late. But suddenly, the massive dark sphere completely shatters, revealing Dale standing there in his new black cloak, looking completely unharmed. Dale looks up calmly, confirming to his father that he is completely fine. Sephia runs over to him, frantically asking if he is all right. Dale smiles, telling his master the shadow creature only stung a little bit. This kid is literally built different, devouring a legendary Demon King's artifact like it is a light snack. SFX, Vine Boom. Sephia is left completely speechless, wondering how on earth an 8-year-old child could possibly endure such a powerful artifact. Dale turns to his father, politely asking if he has a quick question for him. The Duke tells him to speak, and Dale asks with a bright, innocent smile if he can try out all the other artifacts in the vault too. The parents look at him in absolute, jaw-dropping disbelief at his endless greed. The Duke sighs and allows him to proceed, beginning Dale's day-long exploration of the Saxon family's legendary vault. A few days later, back at the ducal family's private training grounds, Dale is practicing his combat stance while wearing his new black cloak. Uncle Helmet walks over, looking extremely surprised as he asks Dale if that is the legendary shadow cloak he is wearing. Dale happily confirms it, smiling as he explains the legendary artifact chose to stick with him. Helmet notes the artifact is widely known to be incredibly difficult to control, asking the young master if he is truly feeling alright. Dale casually shrugs it off, saying aside from a tiny prickling sensation, there is absolutely nothing wrong with him. Dale points out perhaps the shadow creature was simply lonely for a very long time and just wanted to be friends. As he speaks, the shadow creature playfully peeks out from the floor, smiling with sharp white teeth. Helmet laughs, telling Dale he is way too kind-hearted for his own good. Dale smiles warmly, thanking Uncle Helmet for his kind words as the shadow creature happily slides along the ground beside him. Dale then looks up, telling his uncle he has one final request for him today. Helmet asks what he requires, and Dale confidently asks to have a real, full-strength sparring match as combat practice. Helmet is caught completely off guard but quickly smiles, accepting the challenge and promising to do his absolute best not to disappoint him. Dale prepares his stance, realizing facing one of the 7 legendary swordmasters of the continent is going to be an incredibly tough challenge. Helmet draws his training sword, reassuring the young lord and promising to only use basic swordsmanship with absolutely no magical aura involved. Dale is slightly annoyed by this, wondering if his uncle is trying to go too easy on him. But he reminds himself a true knight must always fight sincerely, as that is their sacred creed. Dale decides his true goal in this spar is not to win the duel itself, but to practice using the shadow cloak in actual combat. He knows testing the raw power of the weapons he can form from the shadow creature will determine the artifact's true worth. He instantly activates his Shadow Blade Rush, sending multiple dark shadow blades sweeping across the training ground. Helmet is highly impressed by the speed, quickly raising his wooden sword to block the incoming shadow strikes. The wooden blade clashes violently with the shadow energy, sending sparks flying everywhere. Helmet is completely stunned, realizing Dale managed to completely shatter his defense with raw physical strength alone. Helmet laughs heartily, calling the move excellent as he recovers his stance. The Swordmaster declares he will officially be coming at him for real now, lunging forward with incredible speed. Dale watches him approach, calmly preparing his next defensive move. He uses his Shadow Cloak to launch a surprise attack, sending a massive wave of black energy sweeping underneath Helmet. Helmet is completely startled, barely dodging the sudden dark tendrils rising from the ground. The Swordmaster leaps back, commenting a surprise attack like that is highly fascinating. Dale does not give him any room to breathe, instantly launching his next defensive spell. They clash violently once again, the dark shadow energy colliding with Helmet's steel-like defense. Dale is pushed back slightly, groaning as the sheer impact of the Swordmaster's strike rattles his arms. Helmet is completely amazed, realizing Dale actually blocked an attack that had enough raw force to break ordinary skill swords in half. Dale smiles, realizing this is the massive difference between a regular weapon and a top-tier legendary artifact. They continue to clash over and over, clashing their blades with incredible intensity in the middle of the courtyard. The watching knights murmur in complete disbelief, noting nobody among them has ever lasted more than 2 exchanges against Captain Helmet. They realize there is a massive, indescribable wall of talent separating themselves and the young master. A few days later, on the actual day of deployment, the bright full moon shines over the castle. Elena is standing outside with the baby in her arms, pleading with Dale and saying she still cannot let him go to such a dangerous place. Dale comforts his mother, telling her not to worry because his father and Uncle Helmet will be right there with him. But Elena is still deeply worried, asking what will happen if something goes wrong and he gets hurt. Dale looks at her with a mature, serious expression, explaining he needs to become stronger so he can one day bear the heavy weight of the dukedom. He looks down at his sleeping baby sister, adding, he needs the strength to protect his family when the time comes, which is why he needs this experience now. Dale gently holds his mother's hand, begging her to allow him to become strong enough to protect her. Elena is deeply moved by his maturity, smiling softly and finally relenting. She bids him farewell, wishing her son victory and safety on the battlefield. Dale climbs onto his white horse, waving cheerfully and promising his mother he will be back very soon. The army is lined up and ready, and Helmet reports to Duke Allen that the elite troops are officially prepared for departure. The Duke nods calmly, giving the final command to march out. As they ride out, the Duke turns to Dale, asking him if he has any final thoughts as they head toward the battlefield. The Duke looks at him proudly, declaring their elite cavalry corps, the Black Cavalry, will one day be entirely his to command. Dale stares at the armored knights, realizing these are his knights now, and is determined to make this first battle as their leader completely different from his past life. The military commanders report the time has officially come to begin the military operation. Dale raises his arm, boldly ordering the proud swords of House Saxon to march forth into the battle. The entire cavalry army cheers loudly, shouting their absolute loyalty to the young master. The commander explains that for this operation, 250 elite cavalrymen and the ranger units will be participating. Their final target is a massive horde of roughly 1,000 wild orcs hiding in the mountains. They plan to strike first by crossing the lower Saxon River and completely ambushing the orc forces. But the deep freezing river presents a massive obstacle, and the knights realize there is only one way to cross quickly. Suddenly, Sephia approaches the riverbank, telling the knights to step aside because she will form a bridge of ice for them. Dale looks at her happily, thrilled. His master came all this way just to aid them in their battle. Sephia channels her immense water magic, instantly freezing the rushing river water into a thick, solid bridge of ice. She turns to the army, calmly telling them they can safely pass over the river now. The Duke thanks her sincerely for her timely assistance, expressing his deep gratitude. Dale rides his horse past her, smiling as he bids farewell to his master. Sephia watches him ride away into the dark forest, letting out a soft sigh. She smiles to herself, thinking about how strange and special her young student truly is. She is deeply touched, realizing a student actually managed to make his legendary master worry this much about him. Moments later at the temporary orc base, the dark mountains are quiet, but an elite unit of archers is silently preparing a deadly surprise. The hidden ranger unit known as the Winter Wardens silently raises their bows, launching a massive, coordinated ambush. A hail of flaming arrows rains down on the orc camp, instantly lighting up the dark night sky. The orcs are caught completely off guard, as massive explosions of fire tear through their tents and barricades. One massive orc screeches in pure rage, realizing they are under attack but unable to see where the arrows are coming from. General Helmut takes his position at the front, ordering the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Cavalry battalions to prepare for their charge. The cavalrymen form a tight wedge formation, slamming forward with incredible momentum to crush the panicked orc lines. Duke Allen and Helmut ride alongside Dale, asking the young master what he thinks of the battle so far. Helmut explains the physics of their charge, noting that with each horse moving at 40 kilometers per hour, the impact force is immense. He explains that with 3-meter lances locked in place and enhanced by aura, even the toughest orcs will not be able to block them. Dale agrees the battle is completely one-sided, and the Duke proudly notes this is the unrivaled power their duchy stands on. But Helmut warns him not to relax just yet, reminding him this is only the beginning of the campaign. A group of heavily armored orcs steps forward, raising their massive metal shields to try and halt the cavalry charge. The knights clash violently with the orc shields, sending a massive shockwave of steel and blood through the narrow canyon. Helmut pulls back his horse, commenting that while the ambush worked, it was not enough to completely annihilate the orc forces. He orders the troops to retreat, reorganize, and then finish the job with rotating, continuous charges. He signals the retreat, calling out to all units to fall back to a safe distance immediately. The cavalrymen quickly turn their horses around, retreating back down the canyon as the orcs cheer in victory. The orcs let out a loud, aggressive growl, thinking they officially won the clash. But one panicked young knight is thrown from his horse, landing hard on the cold, rocky floor in front of the advancing orcs. One massive orc swings its heavy iron club down on him, and the young knight can only let out a desperate scream. Dale watches from a nearby cliff as the young knight is brutally crushed by the monsters. Dale watches coldly, muttering that it is unfortunate but notes there is already one knight down. The absolute coldness of this kid. He is looking at his fallen ally like a statistic on a spreadsheet. SFX, Vine Boom. He wonders why the Duke and Helmut are simply watching the knight die without attempting to save him. He realizes they consider the fallen knight already beyond saving, leaving the proud sword of House Saxon exposed to the enemy. Dale demands to know why they are simply standing there, looking back at his father with an intense, questioning glare. The Duke and Helmut remain completely silent, their faces darkened as they accept the grim reality of war. Dale realizes if he tries to chase them down on horseback, it will be way too late to save the remaining soldiers. He decides from this distance, he will need to pierce the orc's extremely tough hide in one single shot. He notes an orc's skin is far thicker than other monsters, meaning he will have to modify his basic ice bolt formula. He closes his eyes, deciding adding a high-precision projectile formula for long-range sniping will help solve the problem. He plans to add a ballistic trajectory equation for stability, maximizing the completion level of the modified spell. He activates a massive blue magic circle, aiming his hand straight toward the orc commander in the distance. He releases the modified ice bullet, sending a high-speed projectile of frozen mana screaming through the night air. The projectile hits the target with absolute pinpoint precision, leaving Duke Allen staring in complete, wide-eyed amazement. Allen comments that while the distance was quite massive, the accuracy of his son's strike was incredibly high. Helmut panics, shouting out to young Master Dale as the boy suddenly rides his horse straight toward the enemy lines. But the Duke tells Helmut to let him be, watching his son with a proud, confident smile. The Duke marvels at Dale's genius, thinking that at his young age, he actually crafted a completely original, highly destructive magic formula. He thinks Dale's inner world must already be incredibly near completion to pull off such a feat. Meanwhile, Dale is riding fast, noticing the other orcs are quickly regrouping to attack the fallen knight. He realizes he is facing two major problems at the moment. First, the fallen knight's body has frozen up in complete panic, leaving him unable to move. Second, Dale's own original sniper formula is way too long and inefficient to use in close-quarters combat. He notes, that is why mages learn simplification formulas, deciding he must quickly shorten his own spellcasting time. He needs a formula that can be cast instantly in the middle of a chaotic clash. He starts simplifying the calculation, shortening the name of the spell from Ice 98 Magnum down to something much simpler. He smiles, thinking to himself this new simplified method will do the trick perfectly. He raises his hand, casting the newly simplified spell called Ice Bullet. The fallen knight gasps in terror as a massive orc swings its weapon down on him. But Dale's rapid ice bullet hits the orc straight in the chest, completely blasting the monster away with a massive explosion of frost. The saved knight looks up in absolute shock, stammering in disbelief that the young master just saved his life. The knight asks why Dale would risk his own life to save a simple soldier like him. Dale steps off his horse, telling the knight not to worry. He proudly declares that House Saxon never abandons a sword that is loyal to their family. Dale is officially the most badass young lord in history. The fallen knight is deeply touched, staring at the young master in complete adoration. Suddenly, two more massive orcs charge out of the dark cave, screaming in rage and raising their rusted swords to crush them. Dale raises his hand, calmly activating his shadow cloak to cast Shadow Blade. Dozens of dark purple shadow blades erupt from his cloak, slicing through the air with terrifying speed. The shadow blades easily slice the charging orcs into pieces, completely neutralizing the threat. Dale stands there with a cold, terrifying smile on his face as the shadows swirl around him. He commands his shadow creature to consume the remaining monsters. The massive shadow creature rises, wrapping around the dead orcs and dragging them into the dark void. The shadow creature completely devours the corpses, leaving behind nothing but bones. The shadow creature lets out a satisfied, creepy chewing sound as it finishes its meal. Dale stands over the bones, looking incredibly pleased with his new artifact's performance. He looks back at the saved knight, asking him with a cheerful smile if he is still here. He casually fires one more quick ice bullet to finish off a stray monster. He proudly declares the battle is officially done, smiling as he looks down at the saved knight. But Dale suddenly sweat drops, realizing his legs literally refuse to move because of the extreme exhaustion. When you try to look cool after a fight, but your 8-year-old legs completely give out on you. The saved knight immediately picks him up and cradles him in his arms, smiling as he tells the young master they finally made it. The knight carries Dale back to Uncle Helmut, and Dale tells his uncle he will leave the rest of the cleanup to him. Helmut orders the remaining cavalry battalions to launch a full charge, completely sweeping the remaining orc forces. Soon after, back at the temporary Saxon military base, the tents are quiet, and the knights report. The orc subjugation was a complete success. Dale is called into the Duke's private tent, where his father sits behind a desk, asking why on earth he rushed into enemy lines alone. The Duke looks absolutely furious, demanding to know why Dale would do something so incredibly reckless and dangerous. Dale stands there looking completely bewildered, swallowing hard and wondering why on earth he is getting scolded after winning the entire battle. SFX, Vine Boom. Inside the dimly lit military tent, Duke Allen sits behind his desk, ordering Dale to explain exactly why he rushed into the enemy lines all by himself. Dale stands at attention, pointing out that his father previously said the Knights of House Saxon are those he will someday lead. The Duke listens closely, resting his chin on his hands as Dale explains he merely fulfilled the heavy duty befitting that title. But the Duke is not impressed, coldly stating his reasoning is incredibly weak. Dale looks at his father in complete surprise, wondering why on earth he is acting this way when the Duke is famous for deeply cherishing his knights. Dale speaks up, asking why his father simply stood by and watched his own loyal knight die. The Duke stands up, explaining the Northern Demon King's territory under House Saxon faces constant, endless hordes of monsters. He states the knights who take the front lines do not draw their swords hoping to be saved. He looks at Dale with a cold, piercing glare, telling him those in the battlefield must think and act solely to survive. He warns Dale that knights cannot draw their swords while foolishly believing someone will rescue them. The Duke asks him how many knights with that weak, dependent mindset he thinks actually survive. Dale stands in silence, the harsh words weighing heavily on his mind. He realizes his father is completely right, and it is a harsh, logical truth he cannot refute. Even though he knew this harsh reality in his previous life as a hero, he somehow forgot it in his peaceful new life. The Duke approaches him, placing his hand on Dale's shoulder and telling him never to lose that strong spirit. He bids Dale to pack his things as he decides it is officially time for them to return to the castle. Dale opens the tent flap, letting the bright morning sunlight stream in. A few days later, the tale of the young master charging into a horde of orcs to save a single knight quickly becomes the Empire's favorite gossip. Rumors spread through the city, with commoners declaring the little young lord single-handedly cut down 1,000 orcs. Even though the story has just a tiny hint of exaggeration, it spreads through the entire empire like wildfire. Dale is shown hiding under his hood, looking incredibly embarrassed by his sudden, massive fame. When you try to be a cool, mysterious dark warlock, but end up becoming a famous child celebrity instead. This incredible incident has brought a massive wave of new energy and morale to the entire duchy. A few days later, back at the castle's training grounds, Dale arrives for his daily training. The knights of the duchy immediately drop to one knee, loudly welcoming the young master with pure admiration. Dale looks at them with a sweat drop, nervously telling them such a grand welcome is really not necessary. Helmut smiles proudly, telling Dale to stand proud because his actions earned their respect. The knights shout in unison, declaring that for the future of the young master, they must become even stronger. Their passionate shouts echo across the entire courtyard. Dale can only watch with a tired smile, commentating on how intensely passionate his knights are. Suddenly, Helmut walks over and reports that the special guests from House Orhart have officially arrived. Dale looks up as Helmut guides him, ready to meet their new guests. Dale thinks to himself they are about to greet a very special and unique guest. The story explains the guests are from Martial House Orhart, a family that once served the fallen Teutonia kingdom. Patriarch Badel, the legendary divine sword, was once a great noble of the fallen kingdom. But when the Empire launched its brutal unification war, both the kingdom and the divine sword perished, leaving House Orhart completely ruined. Dale notices Helmut's expression change subtly, realizing his uncle is probably remembering Badel, the man who originally guided him into knighthood. Dale is slightly worried, thinking this meeting might get incredibly uncomfortable. The Duke welcomes the guests inside the grand reception hall, praising Sephia and Dale for arriving on time. The Duke orders Dale to greet their prestigious guests with the absolute highest respect. A lady and a young girl walk into the hall, and Dale is highly impressed she made it all the way here without any attendance. The lady, Vanessa Orhart, bows deeply as she humbly greets Duke Saxon. She steps forward, introducing her young daughter who is standing quietly behind her. The lady introduces her daughter as Charlotte Orhart, and the young girl looks at them with an incredibly intense, angry glare. Dale looks at her in surprise, wondering what on earth she is trying to say with that look. Suddenly, Charlotte steps forward, demanding to know why her mother is bowing her head to these shameless imperial nobles. SFX, Vineboom. Her mother is completely horrified, raising her hand to stop her daughter and shouting her name in pure panic. Duke Alan remains completely calm, raising his hand to silence the room and saying they have endured much to come this far. The Duke turns to Dale, asking him to kindly escort Lady Charlotte around the castle grounds for a while to let the adults talk. Dale politely agrees, holding out his hand and asking Charlotte if she would kindly come this way. But Charlotte slaps his hand away in pure fury, shouting at him to stay back and not touch her. Dale is left completely startled, holding his hand in surprise and staring at the angry girl. Charlotte's mother is completely pale, shaking in panic as she watches her daughter's outrageous behavior. The lady demands Charlotte apologize to the young master at once, but Charlotte simply lets out a loud tisk, turning her back on them and walking away in a huff. She runs out of the room, leaving the hall in a completely awkward silence. Vanessa bows deeply, begging the Duke to pardon her daughter's extreme impudence. The Duke asks what happened, and Vanessa explains that while Charlotte is not usually like this, her emotions have been highly unstable after recent tragic events. She explains that not long ago, a new imperial overseer named Count Brandenburg was assigned to their territory. He is known across the land as the Empire's Holy Knight, but many people call him the Pig King for a very specific reason. She explains Brandenburg is infamous for seeking to plant his seed in any highly skilled swordsman to produce a talented heir. Even if that person is just a young girl who has not yet reached adulthood, he has zero hesitation in forcing himself on them. She reveals they had to escape the territory because they knew the general would eventually target Charlotte as well. Dale listens to this, a violent, terrifying surge of dark anger rising within him as he remembers how the general betrayed him in his past life. Brandenburg is really out here being the most despicable villain in existence. Dale is absolutely seething. Vanessa begs the Duke to please accept her daughter as a maid of House Saxon to protect her from the general's reach. Meanwhile, Dale finds Charlotte out on the snowy training grounds, standing by the wooden dummy stands. Dale approaches her, asking if she even knows where she is going. Dale looks at her hand, asking if she is feeling all right. Charlotte looks back with a cold, unbothered expression, telling him she does not care about his concern. She suddenly draws her training sword, pointing it straight at Dale and demanding the warlock of House Saxon draw his sword. Dale can only watch with a sweat drop, realizing this girl is just doing whatever she wants. SFX, Vineboom. Charlotte points her training rapier straight at Dale, aggressively challenging him to a fight. Dale stands his ground, calmly telling her he is going to need a very good reason before he agrees to fight her. Charlotte explains she heard plenty of rumors about his legendary battle, where he supposedly slaughtered 1,000 orcs alone to save a single knight. She looks at him with a deeply serious expression, declaring she will defeat the one they say is unmatched in the Empire just to prove she is stronger. She adds that by defeating him, she will officially prove she is strong enough to protect her family from Brandenburg. Dale's eyes widen as he hears her mention the name of Count Brandenburg, the legendary holy swordsman of the Empire. His expression immediately darkens, thinking to himself he could never forget the Empire's loyal dog who stabbed him in the back. He realizes since they both share the exact same target for revenge, she could eventually become a fantastic ally. But first, he decides she desperately needs a quick dose of reality to show her how weak she actually is. Dale draws his wooden training sword, giving her a smug smile that completely ticks her off. SFX, Vine Boom. He challenges her to come at him with absolutely everything she has. Charlotte's eyes flare with anger, declaring she was already fully intending on doing exactly that. She lunges forward with incredible speed, her rapier moving like a blur of light. Their training blades clash violently, creating a massive shockwave of wind and dust across the training grounds. Charlotte thrusts her rapier forward, executing a rapid succession of highly precise strikes. But Dale easily parries every single one of her attacks, his movements looking completely relaxed and effortless. She realizes he is deflecting each attack and countering her wrist snaps with ease, even faintly using his magical aura. She notes he is channeling and wielding his weapon far more efficiently than she is. She remembers a true knight must accumulate aura within their body to exceed normal human limits. Charlotte leaps back, realizing her young opponent is indeed a knight down to his very core. She clenches her rapier tightly, her eyes narrowing as she prepares her next heavy strike. Dale watches her closely, keeping his guard up as Charlotte charges forward once again. They clash with incredible force, their weapons locking together in a battle of pure strength. Charlotte grins, thinking at this close range she officially has the upper hand in the duel. She smiles, believing her victory is completely guaranteed. But as she fights, she remembers her tragic past, thinking about how her father was no longer in this world when she was born. She remembers how every single night, her loving mother would sit by her bed and tell her stories about her father's legendary swordsmanship. Her mother told her she had to protect their noble house in his place, as the proud daughter of the legendary divine sword. She holds out her hand, declaring she is the daughter of the divine sword. But then she looks down at her broken training rapier, tears streaming down her face as she wonders why she cannot win. Dale looks at her coldly, pointing out she cannot win because she is not the divine sword himself. Charlotte looks completely heartbroken, her tears spilling over as she listens to his harsh words. Dale tells her that her pride as his daughter is not wrong, but warns her that as she is now, she cannot protect her family from Brandenburg. He notes the holy swordsman's blade is currently tens of thousands of times stronger than hers is now. Charlotte looks up helplessly, crying as she asks what on earth she is supposed to do. She remembers how even when their kingdom fell and their noble house crumbled, her sword training never stopped. She looks at him with pure determination, wondering why her blade keeps getting stopped by this young boy. She realizes something is deeply wrong with her current approach to swordsmanship. Dale watches her, ready to offer her a way out of her despair. Charlotte charges one final time, letting out a loud shout as she swings her broken rapier with all her remaining strength. Dale easily blocks the strike, his wooden sword holding her rapier firmly in place. He looks into her eyes, asking her once again what she is willing to do to get her revenge. Charlotte asks what she has to do, and Dale proudly declares he will be her shield. The young girl looks at him in complete, wide-eyed shock. Dale promises that until the day she grows strong enough to defeat the holy swordsman herself, he and House Saxon will protect her. Charlotte looks at him with tears in her eyes, asking why he would do something like this for her. Dale tells her it is because her sword is highly worth it, offering her his hand. He challenges her to swear to become a loyal sword for him and for House Saxon. Charlotte drops to her knees, placing her hand on her chest and swearing upon her honor as a knight to serve him. The story explains that while it may have seemed like a mere childish promise, the resolve behind it was strong enough to be called a sacred vow. A beautiful light shines over the training grounds as their contract is officially sealed. Later that day, inside the Duke's private office, Vanessa Orhart officially becomes a maid of House Saxon. The Duke looks at Dale, noting she accepted the offer without any hesitation, and asks what happened between him and that girl. He asks Dale if he made a vow to protect House Orhart in the name of House Saxon. The Duke stares at him with an incredibly sharp, questioning glare. He demands to know if Dale invoked their family name out of simple pity for the fallen nobles. Dale calmly denies it, looking up at his father with a confident smile. He explains, Charlotte is the divine sword's only bloodline, and her natural talent is exceptional. He explains they swore a new oath together, and what he seeks is a new divine sword that will be wielded solely for the sake of their duchy. The Duke smiles proudly, deeply impressed by his son's brilliant, long-term strategic thinking. He comments, his decision is excellent, realizing they now have the last bloodline of the divine sword under their roof. Dale smiles to himself, thinking this is a fantastic blow against that bastard Brandenburg. Dale is playing 10-dimensional chess while everyone else is playing checkers. That is a true Sigma grind set. SFX, Vine, Boom. The story then skips to old Teutonia's capital, Malberg, where a violent scream echoes through the dark castle. A glass vase is smashed violently against the wall, shattering into pieces. Brandenburg stands behind his desk in pure rage, screaming at his subordinates for their complete incompetence. The general slams his fist on the table, calling them idiots for failing to capture a single little girl. His subordinate trembles in terror, explaining they sent assassins but they were all killed before even reaching House Saxon. Brandenburg looks absolutely furious, muttering Charlotte must have fought them off herself, calling his men a useless lot. He sighs in frustration, walking around his office in deep thought. He thinks back to his past battle, remembering how he stabbed the hero Han Sung in the back, calling those the good times. He turns to his glowing holy sword, Durandal, asking the weapon if it agrees with him. He looks at his reflection in the polished blade, smiling creepily and telling his lovely fiancée to wait for him a little longer. He commands his subordinate to immediately contact the local thieves' guild and send more men into the Duke's territory. He stretches out his hand with a terrifying grin, ordering them to bring him Charlotte, that wretched girl, no matter what it takes. It has officially been a full week since Charlotte swore her sacred oath of servitude to young Master Dale. After adjusting to life inside the ducal residence, she has been enduring some intense maid training while making daily sparring matches with Dale, part of her routine. The knights watch them from the side, and Helmut smiles as he asks if both of the children are ready to begin their spar. Dale draws his wooden practice sword, smiling as he confirms he is completely ready. Charlotte stands in her stance, letting out a sharp grunt as she raises her rapier. Helmut gives the official command to begin the match. The duel starts instantly, their wooden weapons clashing together with incredible speed and power. Dale lunges forward, executing a rapid, low-sweep strike to test her reactions. But Charlotte easily parries his attack, her movements looking far more refined than they were a week ago. They exchange a rapid flurry of strikes, clashing wooden swords over and over in a beautiful, coordinated dance of steel. Charlotte thrusts her rapier forward, her blade moving with absolute, pinpoint precision. Helmut watches them in absolute amazement, wondering to himself if this is really a duel between young children. He realizes they are definitely not on par with fully trained knights yet, but their sheer killing intent and speed are absolutely remarkable. The children continue their intense clash, moving like wind across the snowy training grounds. Dale executes a rapid sweep, but Charlotte quickly leaps back, keeping her distance. Suddenly, Dale closes the distance instantly, completely catching her off guard. Charlotte gasps as Dale's wooden blade stops right at her throat, ending the duel in a split second. Helmut applauds them, praising Sophia and Dale for their excellent work and telling Charlotte she has done a fantastic job. Charlotte looks down, asking Helmut to please spare her the empty compliments and demanding to know what she is still lacking. Helmut looks at her, asking her if she truly knows the absolute essence of wielding a rapier. She flatly replies no, and Helmut explains that the true essence of rapier swordsmanship lies in footwork and your two legs, not just thrusting. He explains that while young Master Dale successfully evaded her thrust, he simultaneously closed the distance to strike, and she should have widened the gap to wait for an opening instead. He warns her that the more her blade shakes during a charge, the more her final thrust loses its precision. He tells her that she will need to completely rebuild her basics from the ground up if she wants to master the sword. Charlotte grumbles, admitting she has never had a proper teacher before, and her posture has always been unrefined and unconventional. Helmut chuckles, calling her unrefined style bizarre but incredibly fascinating. Dale watches them, wondering to himself how fast she will grow under the tutelage of one of the 7 swordmasters of the continent. Dale is already planning to use his new overpowered knight to conquer the world. Talk about a master strategist. He realizes that if he does not push his own training, she might eventually catch up to his level. The story explains how mages sense the flow of mana circulating through their heart, engraving that pattern into their body as a mana ring. The main problem is that forming a second circle usually takes several decades of intense training. Sophia looks at Dale in complete shock, asking him if he has already completed forming his second circle. But at present, Dale's newly formed second circle is rotating at an insane, unprecedented speed. He decides that since he has successfully attained his second circle, he should run a quick magical experiment in the forest. He decides to try enhancing his existing ice bullet, aiming to strengthen the molecular bonds to increase its mass and hardness. He plans to project a large caliber barrel to dramatically boost the projectile's rotation and velocity. He casts the modified spell, calling it Ice Bullet Armor Piercing Bullet. Sephia is completely stunned, her eyes wide as she mutters how grateful she is to her student. Dale looks at his hand, wondering to himself why on earth it is always this easy for him to project an armor-piercing bullet. He realizes that the immense influence of an additional magic circle is genuinely significant. Sephia approaches him, gently resting her hand on his cheek and praising him for learning so incredibly fast as always. She looks at him with a proud, affectionate smile, calling him her proudest student. Dale blushes furiously, feeling incredibly awkward and thinking to himself that Sephia is way too comfortable with physical contact. When your beautiful elf master gets a little too close for comfort and completely breaks your cool warlock character. SFX Vine Boom. Later that day at dawn inside the castle courtyard, Dale is walking alone, thinking about how Sephia really startled him earlier. He sweat drops, wondering if she really just sees him as a young child, but quickly tells himself that this is not the time to be distracted. He raises his hand, casting his ice magic and commanding the ice wall to rise. A massive, thick barrier of solid ice instantly erupts from the snow, looking incredibly dense. With a simple wave of his hand, he launches a barrage of ice bullets at his own wall to test its defense. The high-velocity ice bullets strike the wall with a loud, violent impact. The armor-piercing projectiles easily pierce straight through the thick ice wall, shattering it completely. Dale smiles to himself, thinking that next time, he will try adapting the formula into a heavy slug round. Suddenly, he hears footsteps in the snow and turns around to find Charlotte standing behind him. Charlotte looks at the shattered ice, realizing this is the quiet place where the young master has been secretly practicing. Dale greets her, asking if she has been practicing the advanced footwork that Helmet taught her. Charlotte nods quietly, admitting she has been practicing and comments on how much Dale seems to enjoy swordsmanship. She looks down, awkwardly bringing up her rude behavior from before and looking deeply apologetic. She bows her head, sincerely apologizing for acting out and reflecting on how incredibly rude she was to young Master Dale. Dale puts on a dramatic, serious face, telling her she really has been quite rude to him. But Dale suddenly bursts into a bright, cheerful laugh, telling her with a giant smile that he will forgive her this time. Charlotte looks incredibly relieved, her eyes shining as Dale tells her not to be so formal with him. Dale looks out at the snow, commentating on how much he genuinely likes the peaceful, quiet weather here. He explains he can swing his sword until late at night, and the cold winter air cools him down right away. Charlotte smiles softly, her heart warming as she realizes someone else finally feels the exact same way as she does. She looks at the young master in the quiet moonlight, feeling a deep sense of happiness and connection for the first time in years. The snow gently falls over the northern plains as Dale and Charlotte stand together, looking out at the beautiful winter landscape. Back in the castle, the Duke and Duchess are watching them through the window, commenting on how their young son is already growing up so fast. The Duchess smiles warmly, noting how absolutely perfect they look standing together in the snow. She giggles, saying they will definitely have to keep a very close eye on those two as they grow older. Dale thinks to himself that what he needs to do has already been decided, wanting to make sure he lives up to his mother's immense trust. We then skip to the city's slums, where beggars and the homeless line the narrow streets, and Elena is personally providing food and relief. Every single week, she generously provides food, warm clothes, and necessities to those in need, and Dale and Charlotte have also begun working alongside her. Dale is carrying a fresh loaf of warm bread when he hears a sudden, panicked commotion nearby. He spots a terrified young boy running toward them, screaming at the top of his lungs for help. The boy grabs Charlotte's arm, desperately crying out that his mother is in grave danger. Charlotte looks at him with deep concern, asking the young child what is wrong. Dale looks around, realizing the situation is incredibly suspicious, and starting to suspect a trap. He notices they have left their elite escort knights behind and are currently traversing a complicated, dark network of narrow alleyways. He realizes the fact that this specific request was made to young children rather than any adults is highly suspicious to begin with. Suddenly, a dark, hooded figure appears on a nearby rooftop, and Dale instantly recognizes the style as members of the notorious Thieves Guild. He realizes their target is definitely Charlotte, meaning Brandenburg has finally made his move. The young boy who led them here suddenly smiles creepily, telling them to wait just a second while he brings his mother out. Several armed thugs step out of the shadows, surrounding the children and asking what precious noble kids are doing in such a dangerous area. The lead thug steps forward with a smug grin, telling Dale they only have business with the little lady and advising the young master to quietly leave. He draws his dagger, warning Dale that if he tries to act like a hero, he might get seriously hurt. These thugs really have no idea they just cornered a reincarnated mass-murdering hero. They are about to find out the hard way. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale's face darkens as he lets out a cold, chilling laugh that completely startles the thugs. He boldly steps in front of Charlotte, declaring he is Dale of Saxon and swears to protect the daughter of Orhart from low-life thugs like them. The thugs burst into laughter, mockingly praising his admirable aristocratic chivalry. They draw their weapons, sneering it would have been much better for him to consider the time and circumstances before acting tough. They charge forward, sneering that Dale is about to experience some of the real pain this world has to offer. Charlotte panics, realizing she accidentally left her training sword behind, but Dale calmly tells her to stay back and not get scared. He decides this is the perfect opportunity to test his Shadow Cloak's new defensive capabilities. He stands his ground as the thugs close in, completely calm and composed. The thugs swing their weapons at him, but Dale's Shadow Cloak instantly unleashes a violent storm of dark energy. The lead thug screams in pure terror, ordering his men to dodge the attack immediately. He realizes too late that Dale summoned a massive, high-ranking Shadow Beast to protect him. The Shadow Beast's massive claws easily swat the attackers away like flies. Dale uses his newly discovered shadow creation technique, implanting dark parasites directly into the shadows of the fallen thugs. The thugs can only watch in absolute horror as their own shadows start moving on their own. They scream in pure agony as the shadow parasites violently tear them apart from the inside. A massive, grotesque shadow creature rises from the ground, letting out a terrifying, high-pitched screech. The lead thug is shaking in pure terror, realizing this is not normal magic but actual, forbidden undeath. He tries to run, cursing the Saxon dukedom and realizing they are completely outmatched. He shouts that even if Dale is the Duke's heir, he will still die with a simple swing of a blade. But before he can even take a step, Dale's shadow tendrils wrap tightly around his ankles, pinning him to the ground. The thug tries to free himself, but the shadows are far too strong. He screams in frustration as Dale slowly approaches him, looking like a terrifying miniature final boss. Dale commands his Shadow Beast to consume them all, leaving absolutely nothing behind. The massive shadow creature lunges forward, completely engulfing the remaining thugs. The beast devours the attackers, leaving the quiet alleyway completely empty. Dale stands there, his dark cloak swirling around him as he cools down his magic. Charlotte peeks out from around the corner, staring at Dale in absolute, wide-eyed amazement. The shadow beast lets out a satisfied, low grumble as it retreats back into Dale's cloak. Dale notices Cephia standing on a nearby rooftop, realizing his master was secretly watching over them the entire time. Dale walks over to Cephia, asking her if she saw how easily his new spell worked. Cephia is completely speechless, realizing Dale's combat power is already far beyond anyone's wildest expectations. She looks at the massive craters in the alleyway, deeply impressed by his incredible progress. She smiles, telling him he has done an absolute fantastic job today. She points out his ability to control the shadow creature is genuinely remarkable. Dale turns back to Charlotte, asking her if she is feeling alright after the sudden ambush. Charlotte nods quietly, still looking a bit shaken but deeply grateful for his protection. She looks at him with pure adoration, realizing the young master really kept his promise to protect her. Suddenly, the remaining thug who survived the initial blast tries to crawl away, whimpering in terror. Dale casually walks over and stops him, pointing his hand and threatening to use his ice bullet if he does not tell them everything he knows. The terrified thug immediately begs for his life, promising to tell them everything about Brandenburg's plans. He stammers that he will tell them everything, desperately pleading for mercy. But before he can even speak, a sudden blinding blast of magical energy hits him straight in the head, instantly ending his life. Dale looks up calmly, his eyes narrowing as he senses a highly dangerous, powerful presence approaching them from the shadows. Cephia is shown kneeling on the ground in the snowy forest, having just finished her training session with Dale. She looks up, still completely stunned by his incredible talent, and noting his progress is truly remarkable. Dale stands beside her in his black cloak, giving her a sweet, polite smile as they finish their session. He explains his rapid growth is all thanks to her fantastic guidance and support. She looks at him with a proud smile, telling him she is incredibly grateful to have him as her student. But then she warns him he must still learn how to properly control his massive dark powers to avoid another rampage. Dale nods in agreement, promising his master he will take her advice to heart. The story shifts to Duke Alan, who looks intensely at Sophia and asks her if she truly believes his son is ready for what is to come. Sophia looks at the Duke, explaining Dale's natural instinct is already guiding him toward his legendary dark legacy. She notes his talent is exceptional, but warns the Duke they must be extremely careful to protect him. A visual shows Dale's dark past self, explaining how the weight of his previous life still looms heavily over his choices. Dale thinks to himself how his previous life's memories are still guiding his current path toward revenge. He clenches his fists, determined to use his current noble standing in dark magic to eventually bring down his enemies. He remembers how the General Brandenburg betrayed him and vows to make him pay with total destruction. The story explains Charlotte's decision to serve Dale holds a far greater significance than Dale himself currently realizes. Her deep resolve to become his sword is a powerful promise that will shape the future of their entire duchy. The contract between them has officially been sealed, forging an unbreakable bond of trust. Meanwhile, inside Count Brandenburg's private office, the general sits at his desk, looking absolutely furious. He slams his fist down, cursing the Saxon family for interfering with his plans to capture Charlotte. His subordinate stands by nervously, explaining they received a formal letter from the Duke inviting them to the Saxon territory. Brandenburg reads the letter, realizing the Duke is practically ordering him to attend a meeting. He realizes even as the Empire's legendary holy swordsman, he cannot openly refuse a direct order from the Duke. A few days later, Brandenburg and his elite guards arrive at the gates of Duke Saxon's grand castle. The general walks in with a smug, arrogant expression on his face. The Duke welcomes him, commenting he did not expect the holy swordsman to arrive so quickly. Brandenburg smiles falsely, saying nothing could possibly be more urgent than his grace's call. He spots Dale and Charlotte standing near the Duke, and his eyes instantly narrow in pure hatred. He realizes those slippery little brats are the ones who ruined his plans. He smugly holds out his hands, saying he believes he can guess exactly why the Duke called him here today. But before he can even speak, Duke Alan's expression turns incredibly cold. SFX, Vine Boom. The Duke unleashes a violent, massive wave of dark purple aura that completely fills the entire room. A terrifying shadow storm erupts, making it almost impossible for Brandenburg and his guards to even breathe. The guards collapse to their knees in pure agony, completely overwhelmed by the Duke's immense pressure. They desperately cry out to their lord, begging for mercy. Brandenburg is sweating profusely, realizing the sheer terrifying power of the Duke's advanced dark magic. He gasps as the Duke activates the Tempest of Nihil, a high-level dark spell that paralyzes anyone in its reach. The Duke coldly orders the holy swordsman to drop to his knees immediately. Brandenburg struggles to stand, pointing out the severity of what the Duke is doing. But the Duke warns him he will not receive another warning if he ever dares to cross their family again. The general is forced to bow his head in pure humiliation, seething with silent rage. The Duke looks down at him, calmly stating he called him here today for the sake of maintaining peace. He tells Brandenburg that if he ever dares to lay a single hand on the children of House Saxon, he will personally wipe out every single member of the Brandenburg family. He releases the pressure, asking the general to embrace this peace from the bottom of his heart. Brandenburg stands up, shaking with fury as he prepares his departure. He looks at the Duke, remarking, "The Duke's generosity is truly humbling." He adds, "Unfortunately, urgent circumstances prevent him from staying in the duchy any longer." The Duke smiles smugly, wishing him an uneventful journey back to his estate. Brandenburg immediately storms out of the hall, leaving the castle in pure humiliation. Dale watches him leave, realizing what his father showed. The general is a powerful statement of their family's absolute supremacy. The story explains this historical event will eventually become the spark that sets the entire empire ablaze. It begins as a tiny, hidden ember in the snow, but it will not take long for the fire of rebellion to spread. It will eventually become their sacred duty to cut down the holy swordsman and destroy his influence. And when the world hears the legendary holy swordsman was forced to kneel before the Noir Duke, the empire's core will be deeply shaken. Back in the Duke's private office, Sophia looks at Dale, asking if they should be worried about the general's next move. The Duke reassures her, saying if Brandenburg continues his schemes, they will simply destroy him. Dale stands by his father, his eyes glowing with determination. He looks out at the snowy courtyard, thinking to himself his path toward ultimate revenge has finally begun. The story skips forward several months, as Dale continues his intensive magic and physical training. He is shown standing in the courtyard, looking incredibly sharp and focused. The narrator notes the legendary tale of the young master's victory, will soon become reality. Sephia watches him from the balcony, a soft smile on her face. She notes her young student has grown so much in such a short amount of time. The story skips forward to Dale's 10th birthday, where a massive, lavish banquet is held inside the castle. Unlike last year's celebration, the banquet hall is packed with noble envoys from the emperor's court itself. They have all come to see the legendary prodigy of the Saxon family with their own eyes. Among them, the most notable guest is none other than Marquis Eurus, a powerful noble from the capital. The Marquis walks into the hall, his eyes locking directly onto young Master Dale. He has a sly, calculated look on his face. He smiles warmly, telling Dale it is an absolute honor to meet the legendary young master of Saxon. The grand banquet inside the castle continues, with guests marveling at the endless, exquisite dishes prepared by House Saxon. The noble guests enjoy their drinks, commentating on how beautiful the sight is, and admitting they were foolish to think the duchy was too isolated from the capital. Dale watches them in silence, his expression completely blank as the central nobles of the imperial capital's emperor faction chat nearby. He explains these central nobles form the absolute largest and most influential power block in the entire empire, under the name of the Emperor. He realizes the sole reason they have come to tonight's banquet is obvious and is meant as a subtle, implicit warning. It is a direct message from the imperial family that they will not tolerate any insult toward the holy swordsman Brandenburg. Suddenly, the very messenger chosen to deliver that warning steps right in front of Dale. The man has long crimson red hair and a confident smile, greeting Dale and introducing himself. Meet Marquis Eurus, widely feared across the land as Lord Crimson. He is the master of the Red Magic Tower, a brutal man who pursues flame, fury, and absolute order. The mages of the Red Tower were infamous for their strict obsession with strength being the only true righteousness during the Empire's era. Dale remembers they never hesitated to become ruthless executors of ambition, and he himself was actually subjected to all kinds of magic experiments by them in his past life. Eurus smiles coldly, calling Dale the genius prodigy of House Saxon and noting how he has heard rumors of his unmatched magic talent. He notes rumors even say Dale single-handedly wiped out a massive horde of wild orcs just to protect his family's knights. Dale plays along with his innocent act, smiling warmly as he thanks the Marquis for the kind words. Dale politely wishes him a wonderful evening, turning and walking away to escape the uncomfortable conversation. He walks out into the quiet castle gardens, thinking that every year being celebrated like this for his birthday feels incredibly exhausting. He thinks to himself he would much rather be training with Charlotte right now, but notes she is currently busy serving as his mother's maid. He realizes if word gets out the daughter of the Divine Sword was sparring with him, it could be incredibly dangerous for her. But suddenly, a loud, terrified scream echoes from the dark garden maze nearby. He hears a crude, angry voice shouting at a maid to stay still. He sprints down the stone path, wondering who on earth is causing a scene in their gardens. He arrives to find a young maid trembling in terror as a chubby, red-haired noble pins her against the wall. The noble is a corrupt imperial envoy named Petro, shouting at her and asking where a lowly maid thinks she gets the right to invoke the duke's name. The maid begs him to stop, pointing out everyone is busy celebrating the young master's birthday nearby. But Petro just smiles creepily, telling her that rather than wasting time standing around, it is much better to spend it with a master like him, threatening to slit her throat if she resists. This guy is genuinely disgusting. He really picked the absolute worst place to try his sleazy moves. SFX, Vine Boom. Before Petro can do anything, Dale steps out of the shadows, coldly asking him what on earth he thinks he is doing. Petro is startled, turning around and gasping as he recognizes young Master Dale. He nervously tries to cover it up, stammering and asking what brings the young master out here. The maid cries out to Dale, desperately begging him to save her. Dale looks at Petro with a cold, piercing glare, asking him if he has ever enjoyed the company of a woman before. Petro puts on a false, greasy smile, saying Dale is still quite young and probably does not understand these things yet. He creepily suggests he can personally teach the young lord a thing or two about life. He grabs the maid tightly, telling Dale he will show him a really good time. But Dale just raises his hand, calmly telling him not to worry. He instantly activates his magic circle, telling Petro he will get him out of this world very soon. He notes that in this world built entirely on hierarchy, nobody would ever expect a young child to be the one launching a lethal attack. He fires a rapid, high-density ice lance straight at the corrupt noble. The projectile hits Petro dead on, sending him flying backward and crashing hard into the grass. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale stands there coldly, warning Petro he has absolutely no intention of stepping back. Petro clutches his bleeding face, trembling in panic and realizing defying the Emperor's envoys is a highly dangerous move. Dale slowly walks toward him, ordering the corrupt noble to immediately get on his knees and apologize. Petro is completely outraged, screaming in disbelief and asking if Dale actually heard what he just said. Dale looks down at him coldly, pointing his finger and ordering him once again to kneel and apologize to the maid. Petro is seething with rage, cursing Dale in his mind as a little brat from Saxon. He smugly claims that as a representative of the Majesty himself, treating a low-born maid this way is his absolute right. But Dale just cuts him off, asking him if the Majesty truly enjoys violating innocent servants from noble houses for sport. Petro is completely speechless, his face turning pale at Dale's treasonous words. Dale warns him this is his absolute final warning. Suddenly, Marquis Eurus steps out from the shadows, letting out a soft laugh and calling this a highly interesting turn of events. Duke Alan also arrives alongside him, keeping a calm, unbothered expression on his face. Elena's husband looks at Dale, asking him what on earth is going on here. Petro immediately cries out to the Duke, whimpering and claiming the young master was being incredibly reckless and attacked him for no reason. But Dale just glares at him, demanding to know who gave him permission to stand up. Dale turns to his father and the Marquis, explaining their honored guests from the imperial capital are entrusted with the duty of acting in His Majesty's stead. He points out, Petro sought to defile a maid of their house, directly tarnishing His Majesty's sacred name in the process. He explains that because of this, he could not stand by and allow Petro's disgraceful, treasonous conduct to go unpunished. Marquis Eurus smiles warmly, calling Dale an incredibly clever and brilliant young man. The Marquis agrees with him, confirming Dale speaks nothing but the absolute truth. He turns to the trembling Petro, commenting on how a representative of His Majesty's will could stoop so low as to assault a low-born maid. With a snap of his fingers, Eurus unleashes a violent mass of flame that completely engulfs the corrupt noble. Petro screams in pure agony as the intense fire burns him alive. The other guests watch in absolute horror as the corrupt noble desperately begs for mercy. But Eurus just stands there with a cold, terrifying smile on his face, calling Petro a filthy insect who deserves to burn. The massive pillar of fire shoots high into the sky, completely incinerating Petro into ashes within seconds. The horrific screams of the corrupt noble echo through the quiet gardens as he is completely erased from existence. Sephia and the Duke watch in silence as the ashes drift away in the wind. Eurus turns to Dale, smiling warmly and saying, "Purging corrupt worms who dare to insult the Empire and the imperial family is his absolute duty." He tells Dale he is highly looking forward to his future, leaving the young master staring back with a deeply serious expression as the confrontation finally ends. After the dramatic gardens confrontation, the imperial envoys and guests finally leave, letting the tense atmosphere inside the castle calm down. The next morning, the bright sun shines over the beautiful balcony of the Saxon estate, bringing back a sense of normal peace. Charlotte walks into Dale's bedroom, carrying a tray and telling him it is officially time for him to wake up. Dale sits up in bed, rubbing his eyes and thanking Charlotte for waking him up so early. Charlotte looks down, looking a bit shy as she asks if there is anything else he requires. She speaks quietly, saying it is truly an honor to serve someone as powerful and noble as him. Dale can only watch as she walks out, wondering to himself if that was really all she wanted to say. He realizes even though he has lived in two entirely different worlds, he is still incredibly unfamiliar with this warm, comforting feeling. He knows as the eldest son of House Saxon, he must understand the weight behind his family name and use it to its absolute limits. Later on, Dale is called into his father's office, where Duke Alan tells him that while he is incredibly clever, his recent behavior has been quite odd. The Duke sits behind his desk, looking at his son with an extremely sharp, questioning expression. Dale looks back calmly, asking his father why he thinks his recent actions had been strange. Dale explains if the otherworldly hero had not died during his final battle with the divine sword Bedel, the balance of power would be completely different. The Duke looks surprised, listening closely, as Dale explains his brilliant geopolitical theories. The Duke calls his claims about the hero's death completely blasphemous, but Dale remains entirely confident. Dale asks him how he can be so sure of the official records, preparing to drop a massive truth bomb on his father. He explains he is sure because the Empire itself plotted against the otherworldly hero behind his back. A visual shows hero Han Sung being stabbed from behind, explaining how the Empire feared their hunting dog would eventually run rampant. He explains even though the hero defeated the Demon King, the Empire did not actually want to root out the darkness from the Demon King's territory. Instead, they issued absurd orders to cultivate the Demon King's lands, unilaterally demanding massive sacrifices from House Saxon. The Duke is speechless. As Dale explains, the Empire only bestowed that cursed land upon their family to keep them busy. Dale points out, as long as the darkness in that territory is not fully cleansed, the bleeding of their house will never stop. He explains people inside the Empire look down on House Saxon, mockingly calling them the Clan of Darkness. He warns his father that just as they abandon the legendary hero, the Empire will eventually try to remove House Saxon as an internal risk. The Duke is completely stunned, asking Dale how on earth he came up with such an advanced deduction. Dale casually lies, saying, "These are merely deductions he made from reading the historical records in the study." The Duke sits back in his chair, realizing only a tiny handful of people actually know the hidden truth behind the hero's death. He realizes his son is completely right, and if Dale's theory is correct, the Empire is simply a ruthless oppressor that seizes weak nations by force. He stares at Dale, realizing this child possesses wisdom and intelligence that is far beyond his actual years. The Duke finally asks Dale what he thinks House Saxon should do moving forward. Dale looks him straight in the eyes, boldly declaring, House Saxon can never coexist with the Empire. Therefore, the only path forward is to completely destroy the Empire. Duke Alan looks at him in absolute shock, his jaw dropping at his son's treasonous declaration. The Duke leans forward, a terrifying purple aura swirling around him as he asks if Dale even realizes what he is suggesting. Dale calmly clarifies he is not saying they should raise their army and launch a reckless revolt right now. He suggests they should wait and prepare their forces, planning their move for 10 years from now. A visual shows resistance groups across the continent pushing for independence from the Empire. He explains there are many vassals who secretly fear the Empire turning its blade against them. The Empire's economy is continuously shrinking, banditry is increasing daily, and the after effects of the war have only worsened. He explains by then, they will have built up enough strength to safely protect their house against any imperial threat. He proposes to support the various resistance forces operating in different regions to slowly weaken the Empire from within. They stand in the office, talking and planning their moves until the sun finally sets. The Duke sits back, asking Dale what his final thoughts are on this massive plan. He looks at his son, a proud and chilling smile appearing on his face. He bursts into a soft laugh, declaring his son's talents truly no, absolutely no bounds. He tells Dale his young son perceives sights and opportunities that even he cannot see. He proudly declares that from this day on, Dale will no longer be treated as merely his eldest son or a simple 10-year-old child. He promises to treat him as his true, equal heir who will one day lead House Saxon. Dale smiles, thanking his father and saying he has been waiting for this day for a long time. The Duke tells him to speak his mind without any hesitation. Dale looks up, asking if his father is truly going to treat him equally as promised. He asks the Duke to grant him official permission to take the legendary tower trial in the necropolis. The Duke looks completely shocked by his bold request. The story explains the tower trial is a dangerous gauntlet to decide one's rank among mages, or they must face the guardians of the magic tower. Defeating higher-ranked guardians raises your standing, and the strongest warlock who reaches the very summit is granted the prestigious title of Magic Tower Master. The Duke asks how a simple child could ever hope to endure such a powerful, dangerous artifact gauntlet. Dale looks at him confidently, stating this decision is both for his own growth and for the future of House Saxon. He explains if he proves himself through the tower trial, his status as the official heir will solidify the Duke's political position. It will allow him to obtain a legendary form of reputation that is trustworthy, not one built from simple rumors spread by gossip. The Duke asks him if that is his true, ultimate reason for wanting to face the dangerous trial. Dale smiles, confirming it is indeed his true intention. The Duke smiles proudly, telling Dale he will leave this critical matter entirely to his own judgment. Dale bows politely, thanking his father and promising to prove his worth. A few days later, they arrive at the gates of the necropolis, widely known across the continent as the City of Death. The grand purple carriage pulls up to the massive dark iron gates of the city. A group of dark mages lines up, announcing they humbly present themselves before the legendary Noir Duke. Duke Alan and Dale step out of the carriage, their dark cloaks blowing in the cold wind. Dale looks at the massive dark tower looming over them, feeling a sudden, intense wave of magical energy and wondering if he pushed himself too hard this time. The scene cuts to Duke Alan and young Master Dale walking into the massive stadium in the necropolis, the City of Death. The other Academy graduates whispering among themselves, commenting on how the magic genius of the Empire looks surprisingly weak today. One arrogant student sneers, mocking the rumors about Dale's swordsmanship being on par with the Duke's knights and calling it a complete joke. Meet Velik, the top graduate of the Magic Academy, who is extremely confident that he is the one destined to win this tower trial. He snickers, whispering to his friend that the noble brat looks like he would immediately fall over if you just tapped him. Suddenly, an elite dark mage in a white suit approaches them, welcoming young Master Dale. Meet Eris, an elder of the Magic Tower and the Secretary General overseeing all administrative duties. Duke Alan turns to Sephia, telling her that while the trial is taking place, she will be officially assisting him. Dale nods, saying he will be in Sephia's excellent care as they prepare to enter the arena. Eris leads Dale toward the gate, explaining that 59 other elite academy graduates are awaiting him inside. She opens the massive iron doors, revealing the grand, glowing blue arena. Sephia introduces them, telling Dale that these are the elite competitors who will be facing the tower trial alongside him. Eris steps up to the balcony, loudly welcoming everyone gathered here to the necropolis. She raises her hand, announcing she will officially explain the rules of the first-tier trial of the Noir Magic Tower. She orders the participants to check the necklace around their necks, explaining each life necklace contains a protective shield spell and a single life point. She explains this trial is a battle royale-style life point battle, where landing a valid hit on an opponent using the corpses scattered across the field will trigger their shield spell, meaning instant elimination. She adds the attacker who lands a valid strike gains 1 life point, and the participant whose total score reaches 3 points will immediately advance to the next floor. She warns them, any use of forbidden artifacts will result in instant disqualification, calling the rules a quick and efficient way to weed out the rookies. Velik glares at Dale from across the arena, gritting his teeth in jealousy as he realizes how much mana is radiating from the 8-year-old. He tells his allies that since Dale is already a 3rd circle warlock, they should coordinate and take that monster down first. His friend smiles, telling him there is absolutely no need to worry. Velik laughs, saying they became competitors the moment they entered this place, and wants to see if Dale can actually back up his confident look. Eris raises her hand, loudly commanding the participants to begin the trial. A massive wave of magical energy surges through the arena as the combatants instantly cast their necromancy spells. Dozens of magic circles glow violently on the ground as they summon their undead soldiers. Massive, grotesque zombies rise from the cold stone floor, lunging forward with rusty daggers. One massive undead soldier leaps straight at Dale, aiming a heavy strike at his head. But before the monster can even touch him, Dale's shadow cloak activates with a loud whoosh, blocking the attack effortlessly. Velik is completely stunned, staring in disbelief and wondering when Dale even managed to move. A massive explosion of blue frost energy erupts, instantly freezing the attacking zombie solid. Sephia watches from the balcony, realizing Dale just cast an advanced water element spell. The other students panic, stuttering in shock and wondering if Dale is actually a dual element mage. Dale's ice magic completely shatters the frozen zombie into 1,000 sharp pieces. Velik is absolutely seething with rage, screaming at Dale for daring to touch his undead soldiers. Dale casually ignores his screaming, keeping his eyes locked on his next target. He casts his frozen armor spell, wrapping his own undead soldiers in a thick, defensive layer of solid ice. The other students try to attack, but their weapons simply shatter against Dale's defensive ice armor. Velik screams that using water magic like this counts as breaking the rules. He claims that only necromancy and magic that directly controls the undead are allowed in this trial. But Eris quietly watches from the balcony, noting there is absolutely no rule that says mages cannot strengthen their undead with other magic. Velik groans, realizing since the trial has not been stopped, Dale is completely within his rights. He commands his remaining allies to block Dale's undead soldiers and target the boy directly. The students charge forward, shouting they will overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Dale looks at them calmly, realizing the use of his Shadow Cloak's advanced abilities is technically banned in this trial as well. So, he decides relying on his raw physical swordsmanship is the only way to deal with this crowd. He sprints forward with incredible speed, his movement looking like a flash of lightning. He maneuvers through the charging students, easily dodging their clumsy strikes. Dale draws his wooden training sword, closing the distance instantly. One student swings a heavy iron club down on him, but Dale easily ducks underneath the strike. He gets behind the attacker, giving him a smug smile before delivering a swift, crushing blow. The wooden blade strikes the student's necklace, triggering the shield spell with a loud crash. Dale's movement looks incredibly sharp and fluid, and he does not stop for a single second. He sweeps his sword in a beautiful, lethal arc, hitting another student's life necklace. Velik is completely horrified, screaming there is no way his elite undead soldiers are being cut down this easily. He realizes Dale's wooden blade is wielding a level of raw physical aura that is completely abnormal for a mage. He notes Dale's incredible swordsmanship has allowed him to reforge the bones of his undead to increase their durability. Dale lunges forward, executing a rapid, low-sweep strike to clear out the remaining attackers. The sheer impact of his aura-infused wooden sword knocks the students clean off their feet. He leaps high into the air, preparing to deliver the final blow to Velik himself. Velik screams in pure panic, completely unable to block the incoming overhead strike. Velik falls to his knees, staring in absolute wide-eyed terror as Dale's blade stops right at his throat. He stammers in disbelief, noting a mage should not be physically capable of handling a sword this well. He realizes Dale has successfully defeated his very last undead soldier. Velik raises his hands in panic, desperately begging for mercy and claiming he surrenders. Dale smiles coldly, reminding him it is not like he is actually going to die in a training simulation. He delivers a swift tap to Velik's necklace, triggering the shield spell with a loud, final crash. The defeated Velik looks up at him in complete awe, muttering that Dale is an absolute monster. The magical scoreboard lights up, announcing the results are officially in. The announcer proudly declares young master Dale has successfully passed the first floor alone with 60 life points. Dale stands in the center of the cheering arena, looking incredibly calm as he takes his first massive step toward mastering the magic tower. The Tower Trial's second tier begins inside the arena, and the upcoming test is to completely defeat the Guardian Warlock known as a Flesh Golem. Normally, surviving candidates from the first tier are expected to cooperate with one another to survive the giant monster. But Dale has other plans, standing in front of the massive golem and coldly announcing he already eliminated all the other students anyway. He stands completely alone in the massive arena, looking incredibly calm as the other mages watch in complete shock. Unlike the first tier's rules, all forms of magic are officially permitted on this floor, meaning he can use his full arsenal. Dale smiles, thinking to himself, this is more than enough for him to test his true capabilities. He decides this is the perfect opportunity to test the absolute limits of his newly acquired third circle. The flesh golem swings its massive fists down with incredible force, creating a giant explosion of dust and debris. The golem lets out a loud, aggressive growl, thinking it successfully crushed the young warlock. But Dale easily dodges the strike, his dark purple mana swirling aggressively all around him as he prepares his counterattack. He stands right in front of the giant monster, channeling his dark magic with incredible focus. A massive wave of dark purple energy instantly surrounds the flesh golem, causing its muscles to rapidly rot away. The watching elders of the magic tower look on in absolute, jaw-dropping disbelief, remarking the young master's magic is incredibly unusual. They wonder why on earth he chose to let the golem rot away instead of simply destroying it outright with a normal offensive spell. The story explains that back in his previous life as a hero facing massive hordes of monsters, this exact strategy was highly praised as biochemical warfare. Dale covers his nose, grumbling to himself about how bad the rotting corpse smells, but notes the strategy is still highly effective. The watching mages realize what they are witnessing is the grotesque, terrifying process of biochemical warfare being expressed through dark black magic. Meanwhile, the other noble students can only watch from the sidelines in complete, speechless terror. The story explains that on that day, Dale successfully completed the entire exam by breaking through all the way to the 10th tier, setting a massive, historical new record. Later that same night, after the grueling trial, the bright full moon shines over the quiet castle courtyard. Dale is standing by the fountain, relaxing and cooling down after his long day of fighting. Suddenly, he hears gentle footsteps approaching and turns around to find Master Sephia walking toward him. Dale smiles, calling out to her and thanking Sephia for all her incredible teachings. Sephia smiles warmly, telling him hearing him say that makes her incredibly proud. Dale blushes slightly, looking at her and boldly asking Sephia if she would like to go on a date with him. Sephia is completely caught off guard, her face turning red as she stammers in surprise. Our boy Dale is really making moves out here. Even the legendary elf master cannot handle his charm. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale quickly adds, there is a massive city festival happening in the necropolis tonight, suggesting they should go together. Sephia touches her cheek, trying to keep her cool and finally agreeing to go with him. Dale cheers in joy, and Sephia thinks to herself that technically, a date with her young student is not wrong. The scene cuts to the bustling streets of the Necropolis City Festival, filled with bright lights, fireworks, and cheering citizens. They walk along the stone bridge, watching the brilliant fireworks light up the night sky. Sephia asks him if he is tired after such a difficult trial, and Dale reassures her he is completely fine. They walk in a quiet, peaceful silence down the stone path, surrounded by the beautiful city lights. Cephia looks up at the sky, commentating on how beautiful the full moon is tonight. Dale looks at her, agreeing it truly is a beautiful night. He thinks to himself conversation does not flow easily like before, but notes this quiet silence is not uncomfortable at all. He realizes it has always been this way with Cephia, and he finds himself wanting to stay by her side. A few days ago, on the day he successfully attained his third circle, he meditated alone in his room. As he sat in deep meditation, he finally understood what Cephia meant about the inner world. He remembers the intense pain as the rampant mana surged through his heart, making him groan in agony. He realized to surpass his limits, he had to overflow his mana capacity far beyond the second circle. He concentrated his power, forcing the violent energy into a stable, highly advanced magic formula. He realized only by enduring the painful, rampaging mana could he officially attain his third circle. The magical circles glowed intensely as he successfully completed the breakthrough. He opened his eyes, staring at his hands and realizing he had finally unlocked the power of the third circle. And when one enters deep meditation, they inevitably manifest their inner world, which Dale calls his world of realization. He found himself standing in a quiet, dark forest of his mind, realizing this was his inner landscape. He noted there was absolutely nothing here from the start, only a cold, absolute emptiness. But in that hollow, dark world, Master Sophia was the one who reached out her hand to bring light to his life. Dale looks at Sophia in the present, realizing she is the one who truly brings light to his world. He looks at her, his expression warm and genuine. He looks her straight in the eyes, boldly repeating, he really likes her. Sophia is completely speechless, her face turning bright red as she stammers in surprise. Dale just smiles, repeating once again, he likes her very much as his master. Dale really knows how to keep his master on her toes with his smooth words. Sophia smiles back warmly, her heart melting at his sweet confession. She gently pulls him into a tight, warm hug, whispering she likes him very much too. Dale holds her close, feeling a deep sense of peace and comfort in her arms. He looks up at the bright moon, thinking to himself, living life a second time sure does have its amazing perks. A few days later, Dale returns to the magic tower to continue his trial. He arrives at the 11th tier, looking incredibly sharp as he prepares to face his next opponent. He grumbles to himself. He has not made any real progress with Sophia since then, assuming she probably dismissed his confession as a simple, childish crush. He decides to focus entirely on the exam for now, walking onto the arena floor where his opponent awaits. The announcer explains the format of this trial is a direct, one-on-one magic duel, and the victor will proceed to the 12th tier. Meet Albert Rosenheim, a powerful third circle master who is widely respected in the tower. Albert smiles smugly, warning Dale not to expect him to go easy on him just because he is a child. He explains the 11th tier's trial officially allows the complete use of all kinds of artifacts and warlock strategies. He warns Dale with the artifact restrictions lifted, his life necklace can no longer guarantee his safety inside the arena. Dale smiles back confidently, thinking to himself, this is perfect since there is no need for him to hold back anymore either. The referee commands them to begin the duel, and both mages instantly prepare their spells. Albert laughs, telling Dale he better stay sharp as he channels a massive wave of dark magic. He boasts he is not like the rookie academy graduates Dale faced before, declaring his winning streak officially ends here. He unleashes a violent warlock spell called Dark Arrow, sending dozens of glowing purple arrows screaming straight toward Dale. Albert Rosenheim is standing there looking incredibly smug, holding his book open and telling Dale his winning streak officially ends here. He really thinks he is the main character of this story. Before the signal to start even echoes through the arena, Albert launches a massive wave of purple dark magic straight at our boy. Talk about a cheap sneak attack. But our young master does not even bat an eye, casually standing in the middle of the dark purple storm with a solid magic barrier. He did not even move a single inch. Dale looks at him with a deadpan stare, pointing out that launching an attack spell before the duel officially starts is a massive clear violation of the rules. SFX, Vine Boom. He glances up at the silent judges who are totally ignoring the cheat, realizing they are probably just curious to see how strong he really is. Fine by him. Albert realizes his sneak attack did absolutely nothing, and he is already getting triggered, complaining about why he hates dealing with mages. The smug mage slams his book open, laughing like a manic villain as he commands his dark creations to rise from the dirt. Dozens of magic circles light up as he summons his undead army, ordering his servants born from the deepest darkness to swear eternal obedience. Dale is just standing there looking completely embarrassed for him, wondering what kind of cringe light novel translation this guy read to come up with those edgy lines. Seriously, the secondhand embarrassment is so real. Someone needs to teach this dude a lesson. Even though Albert is a total clown, his undead army is definitely much stronger and faster than the typical rookies Dale faced earlier. A massive armored zombie leaps forward with a giant purple axe, swinging it down with enough force to shatter the stone floor. Albert yells at Dale, asking how long he plans to keep dodging and telling him he cannot win the fight just by avoiding attacks. But Dale is just casually sliding around the battlefield, effortlessly parrying and dodging every single strike like a ghost. The giant zombies swing their heavy swords in a frantic rush, but they cannot even graze our boy's clothes. Albert puts on his smug signature grin, mocking Dale and asking if he has absolutely nothing else to show him. SFX, Vine Boom. But just as he is laughing, a massive, terrifying dark purple skeletal hand arises right behind Albert, catching him completely off guard. The moment you realize you are not the boss in this dungeon, you are just the first mob. SFX, Vine Boom. A massive, violent explosion of dark shadow energy completely engulfs the entire area with a deafening blast. Albert survives the blast and quickly looks around, still trying to act tough and declaring he will be the ultimate victor today. But his eyes widen in pure shock as the smoke clears, revealing a massive, empty crater with absolutely no sign of Dale. The smug mage is sweating bullets, frantically looking around the empty arena and wondering where on earth the kid went. Suddenly, a cold voice echoes right from behind his shoulder, asking if it is not a bit cowardly to cheat against a literal child. Albert spins around in pure panic, screaming to know where the hell Dale is, only to see a massive, towering wave of pure darkness rising behind him. Dale slowly steps out of the black smoke, calmly telling his opponent he looks a bit flustered. His eyes glow with a chilling purple light as he activates his legendary Wraith transformation, completely shifting his body into dark shadow energy. This kid is officially a walking cheat code. There's absolutely no way to beat him. SFX, Vine Boom. Albert tries to summon his courage, shouting that a simple shadow trick is still nowhere near enough to defeat him. But suddenly, the shadows around him start whispering, begging to eat him because they are incredibly hungry. Dale gives him a cute, innocent smile, gently patting his shadow and finally giving them the green light to eat. A massive, grotesque shadow beast with glowing purple eyes and razor-sharp fangs erupts from his cloak, lunging straight for the terrified mage. The watching students and elders are completely horrified, covering their mouths in pure terror as they hear loud chewing sounds. Albert lets out a desperate, blood-curdling scream as the shadow beast wraps tightly around him and drags him down. Dale watches the chaos, casually sighing that it looks like his shadows got a bit too excited from hunger. The defeated Albert is crying and scrambling on the ground, desperately begging Dale to spare his life. Dale calmly commands his shadow beast to stand down, and the monster instantly retreats back into his dark cloak. Albert collapses onto the cold stone floor, completely unconscious, as the announcer proudly declares Dale the winner of round 1. Dale stands in the center of the arena, dusting off his shoulders and calmly asking what they should do next. He turns back to the remaining candidates with a bright smile, casually asking who is actually ready for round 2. The next student instantly drops to his knees, crying and screaming. He surrenders because he just wants to live. When you signed up for a magic test but got scheduled for a direct meeting with the Grim Reaper, SFX, Vine Boom. And just like that, from the 3rd round onward, all of Dale's matches ended in default victories because everyone was too terrified to step into the arena. Dale starts his grand ascent, easily breaking through each tier's guardians as he climbs higher and higher up the magic tower. By the time he reaches the 20th tier, the mindless monsters are gone, and a worthy opponent finally stands before him. Meet the Headless Knight, a legendary warrior on a dark stallion, wielding a glowing blue sword. The announcer explains, the Headless Knight is a top-tier guardian created directly by one of the elders of the Noir Magic Tower. This is a real test. Dale looks at the guardian with an incredibly calm smile, while the observers whisper, this is definitely the absolute limit for an 8-year-old. Dale slowly reaches out his hand, wondering to himself if it would be extremely boring if everything in this trial went exactly as expected. He releases a massive wave of his dark, royal aura, causing the Headless Knight's stallion to let out a panicked defensive roar. The dark energy completely blankets the entire arena, putting immense pressure on the guardian. The watching elders are sweating bullets, completely unable to process the sheer density of the magical energy coming from the child. They point toward the battlefield in pure shock, yelling at everyone to look at what is happening to the legendary guardian. The Headless Knight, a warrior known for absolute ruthlessness, slowly drops onto one knee and stabs his sword into the ground, completely submitting. SFX, Vine Boom. He did not even throw a single punch, and the legendary boss is already kneeling. That is a true peak performance right there. Dale just stands there looking completely silent, staring down at the legendary knight with a calm expression. The headless knight is surrounded by swirling blue winds of submission, waiting for his new master's final command. Dale quietly orders the guardian to end himself, and the headless knight immediately raises his blade to comply. The legendary guardian's body completely crumbles into ashes, showing a level of absolute loyalty that even overrides his duty to the magic tower. Dale looks down at the remains, deeply impressed by the incredible power of the royal contract he just forged. But then Dale suddenly sweat drops, realizing he might have gone a bit too far and caused a massive scene in front of the elders. The face you make when you accidentally show off too much of your cheat code and break the game. He nervously scratches his head, thinking to himself he definitely went overboard this time. The observers are in complete, jaw-dropping shock, whispering a high-ranking tower creation just betrayed its own creator to serve an 8-year-old. Dale decides he has already proven his immense talent plenty, wondering if it is finally time for him to head back. He turns his back on the next stage, calmly walking straight toward the exit gate. The elders are completely baffled, asking why he is leaving when he could easily reach the absolute summit of the magic tower. But Dale knows beyond this tier lies a realm of monsters that even the elders fear, and he is smart enough to know when to stop. And just like that, Dale's legendary tower trial officially comes to an end, setting a record that will never be broken. The moment he steps outside the gate, the entire necropolis explodes in cheers, welcoming him like the true magic tower master. Both the high nobility and the powerful elders drop to one knee, showing absolute loyalty to young Master Dale and the Duke. Thanks to Dale's overwhelming performance, the entire Northern Territories officially begin to unite under their family's banner. This is the start of a legendary empire. We start off in the freezing northern plains of the Saxon dukedom, where Sephia and Helmet are keeping a close eye on the snowy borders. Uncle Helmet gets back on his horse, looking completely ready to lead his squad straight into another dangerous dungeon cleanup. He charges forward with his blade raised, roaring for young Master Dale and the glory of House Saxon as they slice through the monster horde. After Dale successfully passed his grueling magic tower trial, Duke Saxon decided to test him further by giving him command of the entire Orc Horde extermination squad. Helmet swings his massive sword, unleashing waves of purple energy that completely tear the remaining orcs into pieces. Commanding an entire army is a task far too massive for a regular 10-year-old kid, but everyone in the territory already knows Dale is a complete monster. Dale stands proudly in his dark cloak, officially taking his place as the rightful heir to the Duke of Noir, as he begins to unite the entire North under his name. The story then takes us back to the grand castle of House Saxon, towering over the peaceful city below. Uncle Helmet returns to the throne room, excitedly reporting to Duke Alan they successfully wiped out 145 wild orcs. The Duke calmly rests his head on his hand, asking about their cavalry losses, but Helmet happily reports they only had 3 minor injuries. The Duke looks over at Dale, asking if the young master used his water magic to protect the troops, but Dale just shakes his head in absolute denial. SFX. Vine boom. Dale is just standing there with a flat, unbothered, deadpan stare like, "Do I look like a defensive shield to you?" SFX. Vine boom. Helmet smiles proudly, explaining this flawless victory was purely the result of the strong swords of House Saxon. The Duke looks at his son with a warm, approving smile, praising Dale for a job well done. Helmet chuckles heartily, telling the Duke young Master Dale has already grown incredibly comfortable commanding massive cavalry units. Dale reflects on how Uncle Helmet has been personally instructing him in swordsmanship, military strategy, and battlefield tactics. Helmet laughs, declaring at this incredible rate, it will not be long before the young master is leading full-scale territorial wars. Later on, Dale is out on the training grounds, sparring intensely with Charlotte as her rapier glows with bright green wind aura. Their practice weapons clash with an incredible impact, sending shockwaves of dust and magic across the yard. They exchange a rapid flurry of strikes, their movements turning into a beautiful high-speed blur of steel and wind. Dale easily tracks her movements, keeping his eyes locked on her weapon as she tries to find an opening. Charlotte catches her breath and sighs, admitting she still cannot compare to his insane level of talent. Dale gives her a playful smile, teasingly asking if he went a bit too hard on her during their spar. Charlotte points out he is already a legendary third circle mage who easily conquered the 20th tier of the magic tower. She grumbles, asking if people in the castle ever get tired of constantly yelling his name and praising him like a god. Dale walks closer to her, telling her not to worry about what other people are saying. He smiles warmly and promises Charlotte she will definitely get much stronger too under their training. The narrator points out that for a 10-year-old child, Charlotte is already exceptionally skilled by any standard. Charlotte gets flustered and shouts at him to stop treating her like a little kid, but Dale calmly reminds her she is indeed still a child. She points an angry finger right at his face, yelling, "He is a kid too," which catches Dale completely off guard. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale boasts his mental age is basically that of a grown adult, but Charlotte just rolls her eyes and tells him to move on. An 8-year-old and a 10-year-old arguing about who is more of a mature adult is peak comedy. We then cut to a peaceful afternoon inside the castle's grand library, where today's strategy lesson is about to begin. Helmet stands by a massive wooden table, calling Dale over to introduce their next major topic. He places a black knight chess piece on the table, announcing today they will be studying the famous hammer and anvil tactic. He explains that during a battle, when the heavy cavalry force is deployed on one or both flanks of the army, the core of the strategy is for the cavalry to break through the enemy wings and completely encircle them while the infantry blocks the advance. He explains the tactic is named after the process of placing raw iron on an anvil and striking it hard with a heavy hammer. Dale nods in agreement, realizing this advanced military strategy relies almost entirely on the overwhelming power of their black cavalry. Helmet pauses for a moment, casually changing the subject and asking about Charlotte's current training progress. He admits, while the young girl cannot compare to Dale's monstrous talent, her growth is still incredibly remarkable. He explains she already established a solid foundation for her swordsmanship, looking like a true prodigy in the making. He notes soon she will be ready to officially inherit the unique aura cultivation and elite sword techniques of House Saxon. But Helmet looks deeply concerned, pointing out Charlotte's quick and fluid fighting style might not be compatible with their heavy sword style. The story explains, while mages refine pure mana through their heart circles, knights must cultivate mana into physical aura through their techniques. And while mages build magic towers based on structure, knights establish powerful orders by passing down their legendary sword styles. Among the legendary orders, the royal families of the continent held some of the most guarded secrets. Dale listens quietly to the explanation, thinking to himself, a territorial war is a highly intriguing stage. He smiles to himself, thinking he always welcomes a fresh opportunity to test his strategic skills. We then cut back to the training grounds, where Charlotte is letting out a sharp shout as she swings her rapier. She spars fiercely with Dale, their training swords clashing together over and over in the cold air. She thrusts her rapier forward with incredible speed, her weapon surrounded by a swirling green aura. But Dale easily sways his body, letting the sharp tip of her blade glide harmlessly past his neck with absolute composure. The story explains, the heavy cavalry of the north is built to act like massive, unstoppable war chariots crushing the front lines. And the elite Nightcrow Knight Order of House Saxon specializes entirely in decimating the enemy forces with raw, overwhelming physical strength. But Charlotte's unique sword technique is built entirely around speed, precision, and highly fluid movements. She wields a quick, free-flowing blade, and while she could easily become a highly skilled knight, she might never reach the pinnacle of the swordmasters. To reach the legendary first sword rank once held by her father, she would need to master the highly complex art of her family's lost style. That lost art was the legendary Sword of Blossom, the pinnacle of the 7 swords that was once famous across the continent. Her father Bottle was the last known master of this beautiful and deadly Blossom sword style. Dale asks Helmet if there is any hope the legendary Blossom sword art still exists somewhere in the world. Helmet sighs deeply, looking incredibly sad as he contemplates the loss of his old master's legacy. He explains the style was completely lost and forgotten when their knight nation was brutally destroyed by the Empire. Dale stares at the chess pieces, wondering if such a beautiful art could truly have vanished from this world forever. As the days grow even more relentless, Dale balances his heavy magic studies, training, and monster raids, causing his reputation to skyrocket. But the time soon comes to test his growth, when an Imperial messenger reports a neighboring territory led by Baron Parker has filed for a territorial war. The messenger explains the Baron is boldly claiming ownership of a highly valuable copper mine that belongs directly to House Saxon. Dale looks on in silence, thinking about how absurd it is for a low-ranking noble to pick a fight with one of the most powerful houses. This random baron must have a death wish because challenging a family of legendary necromancers is a spectacular way to get erased. SFX, Vine Boom. The Duke remains completely calm, asking the messenger what will happen if they refuse to yield the mine and accept the challenge. The trembling messenger reveals Count Brandenburg has reported his official support for the baron's claim, sending a formal letter. The letter smugly offers to send the elite Knight Order of St. Magdalena to resolve the issue in exchange for a massive cut of the mine profits. Dale clenches his teeth as his expression darkens, instantly realizing his old enemy Brandenburg is pulling the strings. He lets out a chilling, dark villain grin, declaring if the general wants to play dirty, then he will gladly answer him in kind. Dale stands there with a completely serious expression, looking at the threat and wondering if Count Brandenburg really intends to play dirty this way. Back in the throne room, Duke Alan Saxon is deep in thought, and Dale notes the Count has probably spent every single day plotting to repay the humiliation his father gave him. The Count knew it would be too risky to openly start a territorial war, so he cowardly chose a border region where his true presence could remain completely hidden. SFX, Vineboom. Dale steps forward in front of the throne, looking up at his father to make his bold move. He confidently asks his father for permission to personally command this battle together with the knights, but Duke Alan instantly shuts him down with a flat no. Alan looks down with an incredibly serious gaze, coldly stating it is still way too early for a 10-year-old child to shoulder such a massive burden. The Duke orders his son to refrain from speaking so recklessly, pointing out a real war against people is entirely different from slaying mindless monsters. Alan turns to their guest, reassuring Baron Greenbelt he does not need to worry because House Saxon will personally protect his copper mine. The relieved Baron Greenbelt bows deeply in gratitude, while Dale stands in absolute silence, completely seething with frustration. Dale clenches his fists, groaning to himself because he knows better than anyone he is, more than ready for a real battle. Helmet walks alongside Dale down the grand hallway, and when the young master complains about his father not listening, Helmet advises him not to take it too personally. The commander explains, while Dale is surely disappointed, the Duke undoubtedly has his own strategic reasons for keeping him back. Helmet smiles warmly, telling Dale he actually prepared a highly interesting gift to help cheer him up. He pulls out a massive strategy board game, inviting the young master to play a game of tactical minds with him. Dale looks at the board in shock, instantly recognizing the game is basically a fantasy version of chess. Helmet explains the game is highly similar to real warfare, warning him that, while the rules are incredibly complicated, mastering it will help him on the battlefield. The commander suggests playing a match will give them a perfect opportunity to discuss advanced military tactics. But before Helmet can even finish his sentence, Dale grabs the board and sprints down the hallway like a maniac, yelling, "This is his golden ticket." Our boy Dale literally just stole a board game and ran off. Talk about an absolute menace. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale bursts straight into Duke Alan's office, catching his father completely off guard. He slams the board on the desk and boldly proposes that if he defeats his father in this strategy game, he must grant him command of the army. He proudly declares, war is not merely a clumsy clash of raw strength, but rather a profound contest of strategic minds. Helmet stands behind him, sweating bullets, frantically apologizing to the Duke and promising to take the crazy kid away immediately. But Duke Alan remains completely calm, raising his hand and telling Helmet to leave the boy be. The Duke smiles smugly, accepting the challenge and promising that if Dale wins the match, he will officially grant his wish. However, Alan warns him that if he loses, he must completely abandon the ridiculous idea of joining this war. He reaches forward and moves his first piece, beginning the ultimate battle of brains between father and son. The match progresses with intense speed, both players moving their pieces across the board in a silent, high-stakes duel. Helmet watches the match in complete, jaw-dropping disbelief as Dale matches the Duke move for move. With a confident smirk, Dale slides his final piece forward, proudly declaring his victory. Both the Duke and Helmet are completely stunned by the flawless defeat. Helmet can only stare at the board in absolute shock, unable to believe Dale actually won 2 out of 3 matches against the Duke himself. Dale smiles, asking his father if he will officially keep his promise now. Alan is deeply impressed, asking Dale how a simple child could possibly master such a complex strategy game. Dale casually lies, claiming he merely found a rulebook in the library, while secretly sweating because telling the truth about his past life would sound way too insane. The absolute smugness of this kid, tricking his parents with a straight face, is his real superpower. SFX, Vine Boom. The Duke lets out a soft sigh, admitting, a promise is a promise. He stands up and loudly declares that in his name, he grants Dale full command of the knights for the upcoming territorial battle, leaving Helmet looking like his soul just left his body. SFX, Vine, Boom. However, the Duke warns him the honor of House Saxon is at stake, meaning defeat is absolutely not an option. He stares intensely into Dale's eyes, asking him one last time if he can truly shoulder this heavy burden entirely on his own. Dale stands tall, looking completely calm and composed under his father's terrifying gaze. He smiles brightly and tells his father to fully trust him because he will prove exactly what he is capable of. Alan smiles proudly, officially sealing the deal. We then cut to Count Brandenburg's dark stronghold, where the general is furiously yelling at his eldest son Philip for drinking and fooling around. Brandenburg is seething with rage, explaining rumors say the young genius of House Saxon will personally lead their knights. But Philip just laughs smugly, holding up his wine bottle and telling his father there is absolutely no need to worry. Philip acts incredibly arrogant, mockingly calling Dale a mere 10-year-old brat who probably cannot even hold a sword properly. The arrogant son begs his father to allow him to lead their knights to crush the brat of House Saxon, while the general grits his teeth in pure fury. Outraged by his son's extreme stupidity, Count Brandenburg slams his massive fist down, completely shattering the table. Philip instantly freezes in terror as his father looms right over him with a terrifying dark aura. Brandenburg screams at him, calling him a fool for dismissing Dale, who is a complete monster his son could not hope to match in 100 years. The general looks down at his trembling son with utter disgust, calling him a pathetic insect who is inferior even to a 10-year-old child. Brandenburg seethes in frustration, deeply regretting he did not capture the daughter of the divine sword much earlier. He decides to entrust Philip with the command of their knights for the upcoming battle, making the boy look up in shock. Philip is completely bewildered, stammering and asking what his father actually means by this sudden promotion. Sir Milvis, their elite knight, steps up behind Philip, coldly explaining Philip's actual job is merely to serve as a useless figurehead. The Count coldly orders Milvis to drag Philip away, leaving his eldest son crying and begging for his father's attention. Brandenburg seethes in private, complaining he wanted to take the field himself but cannot openly fight against a child. SFX, Weinboom. The general clenches his teeth, staring at the table in absolute hatred. He recalls his past humiliation, cursing the Duke of Saxon, and wondering if this entire situation is part of his rival's plan. A few days later, we see the grand white gates of Baron Greenbelt's territory, where the Saxon army is scheduled to arrive. The local baron stands outside, sweating profusely and looking incredibly anxious about the upcoming war. The local knights watch in awe as the elite black cavalry of House Saxon rides up to the castle with a loud, intimidating stomp. Dale gets off his horse, and Baron Greenbelt respectfully greets him, thanking the young master for traveling such a long way. But the baron's knights whisper among themselves, mocking Dale and whispering he is just a child who probably does not even know how to swing a sword. Baron Greenbelt tries to play nice, telling Dale his presence makes them feel incredibly reassured. But secretly, the Baron is terrified, thinking sending a 10-year-old commander is a recipe for disaster. SFX, Vine Boom. He politely invites Dale inside to enjoy a grand banquet, but Dale flatly refuses, coldly stating they do not have much time to waste. The Baron is completely startled, stammering and asking what the young master actually means by those words. Suddenly, with a rapid flash of steel, Dale draws his massive sword and points the sharp tip directly at the Baron's throat. SFX, Vine Boom. The Baron lets out a terrified squeal, completely frozen in fear as the cold steel touches his skin. Dale looks at him with a dark, creepy villain grin, calmly demanding to inspect the troops and asking who is the absolute strongest among his soldiers. Now that is how you introduce yourself as the boss. Baron Greenbelt is about to find out exactly why they call him a prodigy. SFX, Vine Boom. Baron Greenbelt is shaking in complete terror as Dale holds a cold blade directly against his neck, asking him one more time, who is the strongest soldier in his entire army. Dale demands to know the strongest warrior under the Baron's command, his blue eyes cold and piercing. Suddenly, a tall red-haired knight steps forward with an arrogant smirk on his face, confidently declaring he is the strongest man in the territory. The cocky knight mocks Dale, calling him a little brat who is only strutting around with a sword because his rich noble family bought him a fancy position. The arrogant knight proudly boasts he will easily put this spoiled young master back in his place. Dale merely stares back with a chilling, silent glare, completely unbothered by the heavy insult. The terrified Baron Greenbelt lets out a panicked squeal as Dale finally lowers his sword from his neck. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale turns around to look at the entire assembly, calmly pointing out everyone here seems to be deeply doubting his military capabilities. He explains they obviously doubt him because he is just a 10-year-old child who was suddenly put in charge of an important battle without any prior warning. With a sudden violent crash, Dale slams his heavy sword deep into the stone floor. He calmly states, the absolute fastest way to clear all of their mutual doubts is with the sword. He lets out a dark, creepy smile as the shadow covers his face, preparing to deliver a brutal reality check. Dale points out the self-proclaimed strongest knight they are so proudly boasting about is currently drunk out of his mind, making his fighting skills a complete joke. The red-haired knight grits his teeth in pure fury, asking Dale if drinking also gave him the courage to speak to him like that. The angry knight draws his massive weapon, telling the young master they are going to settle this right now. He steps forward with his heavy sword ready, creating a massive aura of dust as he takes his combat stance. The knight declares upon his honor as a warrior, he will prove the raw power of the Baron's sword. Dale stands calmly in front of him, keeping his weapon ready as the challenger prepares his charge. They move to a wide dirt arena inside the castle gates, with all the local knights gathered around to watch the duel. The arrogant knight laughs loudly, asking Dale if he has already heard of his famous swordsmanship. Dale casually shrugs, replying, he has indeed heard plenty of rumors about his incredibly peculiar sword. The red-haired knight charges forward with a massive deafening roar, raising his giant sword to crush our boy in one single hit. He sprints across the dirt arena with incredible speed, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The challenger leaps high into the air, bringing his massive blade down with absolute crushing force. But Dale easily blocks the massive heavy strike with just his one-handed sword, creating a bright shield of purple magical circles around him. The knight is completely horrified as our boy holds his massive weapon back with absolute effortless ease. SFX, Vine Boom. The challenger lets out another desperate, angry roar, trying to push through Dale's defensive stance with all of his remaining strength. Dale looks at him with cold, analytical eyes, quickly realizing the knight's heavy sword is not even infused with basic aura. He realizes only a tiny handful of elite, high-ranking knights can actually manage to use a proper aura blade. Dale decides since his opponent is trying his absolute best, he should show him proper respect and respond in kind. Our boy instantly activates his Dark Shadow artifact, unleashing a violent storm of purple magic circles all over the training ground. The red-haired knight looks around in sheer panic as massive waves of dark purple shadow energy completely blanket the stone floor. The challenger's eyes widen in absolute terror as multiple dark shadow hands rise from the ground to grab his legs. He groans in absolute agony as the immense pressure of the shadow magic weighs heavily on his chest, making it impossible to move. The knight falls to his knees, cursing Dale because he cannot stop the relentless shadow attacks and his concentration is completely broken. Dale steps forward and points his glowing, magic-infused sword directly at the knight's throat, ending the duel in seconds. Dale looks down at his defeated opponent, coldly noting the knight's actual fighting skills are not impressive at all. The defeated knight can only stare back in absolute, jaw-dropping shock. The challenger falls flat on his back, groaning in pain while the terrified Baron Greenbelt and his men run over to check on him. Dale looks at them deadpan, wondering to himself if this elite knight is actually being serious right now. The Baron holds his wounded soldier, staring at the young master in complete, wide-eyed disbelief. Baron Greenbelt turns to Dale with a terrified, angry look, screaming to know why he had to incapacitate his elite knight right before a massive battle. SFX, Vine Boom. Dale looks back at him with an incredibly cold, piercing glare that completely silences the entire room. Our boy steps closer to the trembling Baron, asking him if he even understands the gravity of their current situation. Dale point-blank tells him that with such pathetic low-level skills, the Greenbelt forces would only serve to drag his knights down during the war. The Baron is sweating bullets, completely pale as Dale asks if he was simply planning to sit back and watch while House Saxon did all the hard work. The defeated red-haired knight looks down in deep shame, unable to even look our young master in the eyes. Dale holds his sword high in front of the crowd, boldly declaring the noble Saxon family never hesitates to serve as the shield of those they protect. But he sternly warns them, his family's protection does not excuse them from completely neglecting their own military duties. Therefore, until the actual battle arrives, the elite knights of his duchy will personally serve as their training sword. He looks down at the terrified knights, ordering them to choose their path immediately. He asks them if they are willing to follow his lead, or if they would rather lose the very land beneath their feet to the enemy. The local knights look at each other, instantly realizing they have absolutely no choice but to submit. One by one, the entire order of Baron Greenbelt's knights drops to their knees, bowing before the 10-year-old commander. The kneeling warriors shout in unison, swearing their absolute unconditional loyalty to young Master Dale. The story shifts back to the grand Saxon castle during a quiet, peaceful night under the bright full moon. Inside the Duchess's private chambers, Elena is resting comfortably in bed, while Duke Alan stands beside her to offer his reassurance. The Duke gently strokes his wife's golden hair, looking incredibly peaceful. He proudly tells her that when Dale grows older, the incredible sights their son will witness are far beyond anything he can even fathom. The Duke smiles warmly, showing absolute undying confidence in his son's dark, legendary potential. He declares one day, their brilliant child will officially become the absolute ruler of this entire world. Meanwhile, back in his room, Dale is rubbing his temples in complete frustration, sighing about how hopeless and pathetic the outside world is. He stands by his commander, realizing the holy swordsman Brandenburg chose to intervene because he already knew about Greenbelt's weak defenses. Dale smiles darkly, thinking to himself if they want to play dirty, then he has some highly devious plans of his own as well. The next morning, the bright sun rises over the training grounds as the loud, painful grunts of the Greenbelt Knights echo through the air. The lazy knights are forced to run endless laps while carrying massive heavy logs on their shoulders, groaning in absolute agony. The training is incredibly brutal, with knights collapsing on the grass under the weight of giant rocks, while the Saxon instructors yell at them to get back up. Dale sits on a temporary wooden throne, coldly mocking them and asking if they really dare to call themselves proud northern knights. When one of the collapsed soldiers whines about being injured, Dale snaps back, telling him he has not even done enough training to warrant whining yet. He commands his instructor to teach the Baron's knights everything from the ground up, starting with basic stamina training. Dale then turns to his commander, ordering him to send a messenger to Baron Parker's territory to propose immediate negotiations. You just know Dale is planning something absolutely devious for his enemies. Count Brandenburg is definitely not ready for what is coming. SFX, Weinboom. The scene cuts to a massive white tent standing in the middle of a lush green valley, serving as the official negotiation site between the two baronies. Inside the tent, Dale sits calmly at a long wooden table, with his personal commander standing right behind him to prepare for the meeting. Dale looks incredibly composed and mature, resting his chin on his clasped hands as he notes they only have a few weeks at most. He explains since the St. Magdalena Knight Order is embarking on a long march, they are highly likely to launch a preemptive strike because of their terrible supplies. Furthermore, he warns Baron Parker's knightly forces are highly experienced and should not be underestimated under any circumstances. Suddenly, the guard announces Count Brandenburg's eldest son, Philip, is officially entering the tent. Dale looks up and lets out a sweet, innocent smile, thinking to himself his predictions were completely spot on and they sent exactly those two. Philip struts inside, looking incredibly proud in his heavy silver armor as he scoffs at the young master. SFX, Weinboom. Right behind him is a sharp blonde knight named Sir Milvus, who is known as the true military commander of this entire battle. Dale politely greets the young lord, while Philip sits opposite him, letting out a loud, mocking laugh. The arrogant son leans forward, mockingly asking why on earth Dale wants to negotiate after all this time. He laughs smugly, calling Dale a little brat and asking if he ended up wetting himself before facing a real war. This dude Philip is laughing like he already won the battle, completely oblivious to the absolute monster sitting right in front of him. Philip demands to know the real reason why Dale agreed to his request to negotiate, but Dale just calmly cuts him off. Our boy looks him straight in the eyes and coldly states he was not actually asking him anything. SFX, Weinboom. Dale stands up slightly, declaring he has absolutely no intention of addressing a useless puppet who is shoved into the role of a figurehead. He points directly at the knight behind him, stating he is only interested in speaking with Sir Milvus, the true commander. Dale lets out a chilling dark smile, asking if that is not the absolute truth of their little arrangement. Philip is completely stunned, his face turning red as he clenches his fists in pure fury. The absolute rage on his face is priceless. He is seething because his authority was completely vaporized in seconds. SFX, Weinboom. Sir Milvus quickly steps in, placing his hand on Philip's shoulder and telling him not to let a child's words shake his composure. Milvus sweats nervously, knowing the Count's deep disappointment in his eldest son is a closely guarded secret known only to a few. Dale smiles smugly, asking the knight how it feels to serve a master whose own father does not possess a single shred of trust in him. Philip completely loses his mind, slamming his hands on the table and screaming. The negotiations are officially over. The seething lord storms toward the exit, declaring they have absolutely no reason to remain in the tent any longer. But Dale calmly speaks up, asking Milvus if a holy swordsman like him really requires permission from a useless master just to speak. He mocks Philip, pointing out lowering his head to receive orders from someone beneath him makes him look like a complete slave. He asks if this pathetic appearance is truly what is expected of the proud firstborn of a noble count. Sir Milvus tries to calm him, but Philip is too far gone, screaming at his own knight to shut his mouth. Dale is just casually playing him like a cheap fiddle, and the comedy of it is genuinely incredible. The young lord is shaking and sweating in pure humiliation, while Dale sits back with a highly satisfied smile. Dale chuckles, mockingly stating at this rate, he really cannot tell if Philip is the holy swordsman's puppet, or if he is simply a mindless puppet being controlled by Sir Milvus himself. Dale smiles warmly, thinking his entire strategy is to disrupt the enemy's chain of command, and he never cared about negotiating. He turns to his instructor, ordering Sir Bale to step outside the tent for a moment. The loyal commander bows and exits, leaving only the three of them remaining inside the quiet tent. Dale rests his chin on his hands, calmly asking if they can finally speak in private now. He suggests they should talk as the highest-ranking commanders who actually bear the real responsibility for this battlefield. Philip is absolutely seething, gritting his teeth as he tries to process the extreme humiliation. The young lord sits back down, screaming, "It is fine," while Sir Milvus looks on in absolute horror. Philip barks orders, screaming at Milvus to leave the tent immediately. He demands to know if the knight did not hear his highest-ranking commander speaking to him. The knight is forced to step back in pure frustration, realizing Philip has completely fallen for Dale's obvious trap. He bows his head and walks out, leaving the two noble heirs alone at the table. Dale smiles, thanking Philip and stating he requested this private meeting strictly to discuss their actual negotiations. Philip looks at him suspiciously, asking if Dale really has something that can convince him to back down. Dale leans forward, proposing that if the St. Magdalena Knight Order withdraws from the battle immediately, House Saxon will generously provide all the necessary food and supplies required for their entire army's return journey. Philip slams his hands on the table, asking in disbelief if Dale actually dares to call this a real negotiation. Dale calmly confirms it, advising him to take the offer if he wants to avoid total disaster. He warns him if he refuses, his army will be completely annihilated, his reputation will be dragged through the mud, and the holy swordsman's name will fall. Dale tells him this is his absolute final chance to maintain even a tiny shred of his personal dignity. Philip suddenly bursts into hysterical laughter, screaming, "The knight was right, and Dale only intended to mock them from the start." Dale lets out a creepy, dark smile, clasping his hands and calling the rejection a massive shame. Philip points his finger, warning Dale he just threw away his very last chance to survive. But Dale just smiles back, telling him when the battle is inevitably lost, the one who will bear the blame is not the real commander. He looks at the sweating lord, pointing out, "The Empire will blame the incompetent, useless firstborn of Count Brandenburg." Now that is a legendary burn. Dale completely destroyed his entire confidence and left him shaking. Philip grits his teeth, looking absolutely pale as he tells Dale not to be so absurd. The furious lord stands up and storms out of the tent, screaming, "Dale will not be smirking for long. SFX, Vine Boom." Dale smiles calmly, telling his departing opponent to keep that confidence for as long as he possibly can. The scene cuts back to the castle grounds, and the narrator explains the negotiations have officially collapsed. Back at the balcony, Philip stands with his elite knights, asking about the enemy's current movements. His subordinate reports the proud knights of House Saxon have already begun their mobilization. Sir Milvus looks out at the horizon, deeply troubled by the young master's chilling composure and calm eyes. Dale is shown riding his horse in full armor, looking incredibly heroic as he prepares to lead his troops. The narrator notes despite his young age, Dale has the face of a seasoned warrior who should never be underestimated. Sir Milvus draws his sword, deciding this is the absolute perfect opportunity to cut down the young prodigy before he grows any stronger. Milvus really thinks he is about to cut down our boy, but he is just delivering himself as the next mini-boss to get completely crushed. SFX, Vine Boom. He stands in front of his army, shouting to his knights that they will teach the arrogant brat the true meaning of silence. On the other side, Dale receives the report that the enemy forces have begun their march, and our boy just smiles confidently. He draws his glowing, magic-infused sword and raises it high under the cloudy winter sky. He shouts to his army, declaring the time has officially come for the proud swords of House Saxon to march forward. The entire army raises their weapons, roaring in absolute loyalty as Dale commands them to show the enemy a blood worthy of their family name. The battle kicks off with a massive clash as the proud soldiers of Baron Greenbelt collide directly with Baron Parker's advancing troops. One of the frontline soldiers gets brutally slashed across the chest, letting out a sharp grunt of pain as he collapses into the dirt. Seeing the line waver, Sir Milvus charges forward on his heavy stallion, loudly commanding his 1st Cavalry Battalion to advance. Sir Milvus maps out his strategy, knowing the absolute key to winning this entire war is stopping the legendary Nightcrow Knight Order. Since they cannot easily gauge the enemy's actual firepower, he decides to place Lord Philip safely in the center of the formation to avoid any stupid accidents. Furthermore, he plans to station Baron Parker's forces on the left wing to keep the Greenbelt Knights fully occupied. During that time, Milvus intends to personally lead the elite troops to strike Dale's knights directly from the flank. He charges right into the chaotic fray, shouting at his men that they absolutely must not miss this golden opportunity to end the war. A nearby Greenbelt soldier looks completely panicked as the battlefield around him descends into absolute chaos. An elite Parker knight raises his massive dark blade, shouting a loud war cry for the glory of their county as he lunges forward. Their weapons clash violently, creating a high-speed blur of steel and magical sparks under the gray winter sky. One of Dale's elite knights looks completely startled as the enemy forces actually begin to breach their defenses. But out of nowhere, Dale appears on his horse, calmly telling the enemy this battle is not going to go the way they want. SFX, Vine Boom. The local knights are completely overjoyed, cheering in pure relief that they successfully survived the initial assault. The sheer relief of these soldiers is so real, they seriously thought they were completely done for. The soldiers shout in excitement, realizing young Master Dale personally traveled to the dangerous front lines just to lead them. Dale raises his sword, loudly commanding his troops to hold their ground and fight to the absolute end. His passionate words completely ignite the spirits of his knights, who charge forward for the glory of House Saxon. Sir Milvus watches from a distance, letting out a soft chuckle as he sees our boy taking the field. The commander is highly amused, realizing Dale willingly made himself bait just to force a direct clash between their main forces. He smiles smugly, thinking to himself, this is exactly what he wanted from the very start. He raises his heavy lance, shouting for the glory of Count Brandenburg as he prepares to lead his own massive charge. The elite knights follow his lead, their weapons gleaming as they prepare to completely crush the young master's forces. Dale's commander spots the movement, loudly ordering the entire Saxon army to charge and protect their lord at all costs. The two massive armies collide in a brutal explosion of dust and steel, turning the peaceful valley into a chaotic war zone. Sir Milvus slashes through the Saxon knights with his sword, boldly declaring they will end this battle swiftly. He rides fast, shouting for his battalion to follow him so they can finally defeat Dale and end this war. He looks incredibly determined, urging his elite knights to prove their legendary reputation on the field today. Milva slashes through a Saxon soldier with immense power, sending blood splattering onto the cold ground. The Saxon knights try to block him with lances, but he just charges past with a massive roar. But suddenly, Novus is completely startled as a heavy black lance blocks his path with incredible force. Their weapons clash violently, creating a powerful shockwave that sends both riders sliding back. Milva struggles to maintain his balance, realizing his opponent is actually incredibly strong. He watches the battlefield, suddenly noticing the Saxon forces are beginning to pull back. Sir Milvus looks incredibly stressed, sweating profusely as he realizes something feels extremely off. Even though they are pushing back the enemy, the Nightcrow Knight Order is falling far too easily. The smart general finally realizes he just walked straight into a massive, calculated trap. He wonders why the infamous destroyers of the battlefield are giving up so quickly, instantly sensing a trap. Suddenly, a messenger rides up in a panic, reporting Baron Parker's forces are being completely overrun on the left wing. Milvus is completely shocked, screaming to know how their left wing could possibly collapse so quickly. The Baron's knights are being absolutely decimated, screaming in pure terror as they try to flee. The enemy knights are absolutely terrified, realizing the Greenbelt forces are suddenly using high-level magic aura. Lord Philip is sweating bullets, looking absolutely horrified as his men report the left wing is requesting immediate reinforcements. The messenger screams the Saxon Aura Knights easily broke through Baron Parker's lines, making the situation completely hopeless. Philip grits his teeth in pure panic, frantically wondering what on earth he is supposed to do. He recalls Dale's mocking warning about how his father would consider him a useless disgrace, and gets completely consumed by absolute madness. A messenger reports Milvus recommends merging their center and rear forces to protect the left wing, but Philip is way too angry to listen. Honestly, this guy is an absolute clown who completely threw the match for his entire army. Talk about the worst squad leader in recorded history. SFX, Vineboom. He screams at the messenger to be silent, completely ignoring the wise commander's warning. He loudly orders all of their rear cavalry to redirect to him, preparing to launch a direct assault on the right wing. The young lord is literally foaming at the mouth with madness, declaring that before their lines collapse, he will personally take Dale's head. An elite knight reports to Sir Milvus that the young lord is bringing their entire rear cavalry straight to the front lines. Milvus grinds his teeth in pure fury, cursing the worthless brat for completely ruining his plans. He realizes their right wing was already winning, and sending additional reinforcements there will only completely ruin their overall efficiency. But Philip is completely blinded by the single thought of striking the enemy commander, ignoring absolutely all advice. Milvus realizes this catastrophic misjudgment has basically sealed their absolute doom on this battlefield. The entire left wing is about to collapse, and they will soon find themselves completely surrounded by the enemy. When your squad leader completely throws the match, and you are about to get absolutely spawn-camped by the enemy. SFX, Vine, boom. His knights panic, screaming the captain must order an immediate retreat before it is too late. But Sir Milva stares forward with intense resolve, coldly stating it is not over yet. The general looks incredibly determined, absolutely refusing to accept a humiliating defeat. He spots Dale in the distance, noting the young master looks far too confident of victory. Milvas grows furious, declaring he will personally crush the arrogant brat's composure with his own hands. He grips his sword tightly, preparing to launch one final desperate charge. The general points his sword high, calling out to his elite 1st Cavalry Battalion. The knights raise their weapons, shouting there is only one path left and begging their captain to lead them. Sir Milva stands tall, preparing his elite guard for the final bloody clash. The knights raise their swords in front of their faces, preparing a holy vow in the name of Saint Magdalena to bless their weapons. Novas closes his eyes, praying for the protection of their goddess to grant them grace and mercy on the field. His eyes snap open, glowing with a bright, terrifying red aura as his magic power officially explodes. The general charges forward with his stallion, shouting at his men to follow him as they prepare to tear right through the Saxon lines. The entire elite guard lets out a massive roar, charging straight toward our young master for the final bloody showdown. Sir Milvas wastes absolutely no time, charging ahead on his massive stallion and roaring at his knights to follow him. He rallies his entire elite guard under the banner of Saint Magdalena, hoping to crush the young master in a single sweep, while Dale watches the incoming assault with absolute calm. Our boy quietly notes the enemy is finally catching up, completely unfazed by the terrifying army heading his way as he prepares his counter. Novas is looking incredibly stressed, focusing entirely on reaching Dale, but Dale knows that on the front lines, a commander's field of vision is always quick to narrow. The weight of war and intense anxiety completely clouds the judgment of even the most seasoned warriors, as Dale slowly raises a beautiful bow forged entirely from glowing blue ice magic. This mental block is something even a legendary knight like Milvas cannot escape, and he looks up in absolute shock as he realizes his young opponent is channeling massive magical energy. Dale casually readies his arrow, mocking the commander and asking if this is really his first time seeing real magic. With a simple release, the high-speed ice projectile screams through the cold winter air, aimed directly at the charging enemy lines. Milvas barely manages to raise his heavy blade to block the incoming strike, but the sheer force of the magical impact is absolutely massive. The violent shockwave of ice energy explodes, throwing the surrounding riders completely off balance. SFX, Vine Boom. Milvas is sweating profusely, unable to believe anyone could fire with that level of pinpoint accuracy while riding a horse at full gallop. Dale continues to gallop his stallion, his blue eyes glowing as he tells the general that without some serious mounted combat skills, attempting that shot is completely impossible. Before they can even recover, Dale unleashes his next spell, commanding a massive wall of ice to rise from the snowy ground. A colossal barrier of solid blue frost erupts right in front of the charging knights, completely halting their momentum. The panicked knights pull back their horses, screaming. The giant ice wall is completely blocking their path forward. Dale takes this golden opportunity, shouting at his troops that the time is now. He boldly commands all of his forces to launch a massive, coordinated counterattack. The elite black cavalry of House Saxon charges forward from the flanks, moving like an unstoppable wave of dark armor. They slam directly into the disorganized enemy lines, roaring at each other to protect the young master as his absolute shield. The battlefield descends into total chaos as weapons clash and sparks fly under the gray winter sky. Milvas looks around in pure panic, finally realizing something is terribly wrong. He realizes they have been completely played, and Dale's goal from the start was not to engage directly, but to buy time and protect his command. To make matters worse, Lord Philip is screaming in pure terror as the black cavalry completely overruns his positions. Honestly, this guy is an absolute clown who completely threw the match for his entire army, cementing his legacy as the worst squad leader ever. Milvas realizes that because of Philip's massive panic, their center forces became overcrowded on the right flank, leaving their entire front line completely twisted out of shape. The general curses in pure frustration, realizing the only option left for them is to take out the enemy commander directly. He unleashes a powerful roar, channeling his remaining holy aura and charging straight toward Dale. But Dale merely stands his ground, watched by his loyal knights as the ice shards from the battle drift right past him. Milvas points his glowing sword at Dale, declaring, "This is as far as he goes, and he will face the young master himself." Dale merely replies with a smug, satisfied smile, completely unbothered by the threat. The battle soon comes to a decisive end, with the fields completely covered in defeated knights and broken weapons under the sunset sky. Dale stands over the defeated general, coldly noting Milvis's habit of overestimating the power of his aura. Knight seems completely unchanged. He explains the rigid battle doctrines of the St. Magdalena Knight Order ultimately became their most fatal weakness on this battlefield. Dale remembers that in his previous life as a hero, he spent countless battles studying their tactics, knowing their every move like the palm of his hand. A Saxon soldier runs up to report, happily announcing the knights under Baron Greenbelt successfully broke through. Milvis grinds his teeth in pure agony, muttering the left-wing commander Baron Parker has also been captured, and blaming everything on that idiot Philip. Dale looks down at him, pointing out Philip clearly did not trust him, and asks if Milvis was planning to set a trap from the very beginning. Dale smiles warmly, telling him the battlefield is always chaotic, and absolutely no one can truly foresee what is to come. He states that in this repeated chaos, those who court their own ruin have absolutely nobody but their own foolishness to blame. In accordance with the grand traditions of the Empire, Dale offers a choice, stating he intends to show mercy to those who beg for their lives for the price of a few gold coins. One arrogant knight next to Milvis screams, "They should not be ridiculous," declaring he would rather die right here than beg a child for his life. Dale tilts his head, his smile turning incredibly cold as he asks if that is truly so. Before the knight can even blink, Dale's dark magic spear pierces straight through his chest, silencing him forever. Yeah, he definitely should have kept his mouth shut because you do not talk back to a cold-blooded reincarnated hero like that. SFX, Vineboom. Dale casually turns his gaze back to Milvis, asking what his final choice will be. Faced with absolute death, the proud commander drops his head, bowing deeply to the young master just to save his remaining men. Dale stands over him in absolute silence as the wind howls across the quiet battlefield. Milvis trembles in pure humiliation, thinking to himself he is not afraid of death, but he must survive to warn the other knights. He desperately needs to pass on the terrifying truth that this child is an absolute monster who poses a massive threat to the entire empire. He loudly orders his remaining knights to drop to their knees and submit immediately. Milvis declares that in accordance with imperial tradition, they will officially surrender and demand proper treatment as prisoners of war. Dale looks down at him, commenting since they went as far as kneeling to beg for their lives, no further provocation will matter. But then Dale's expression shifts into a terrifying deadpan, coldly telling them absolutely not. Dale's shadow cloak flares with dark, swirling energy as he declares absolutely no one here will survive this day. With a chilling, wide-eyed smile, he gives the final ruthless command to kill them all. Even the hardened warriors of the Night Crow Knight Order are completely shocked by his ruthless order, as imperial custom usually allows captured knights to buy their freedom. Even so, Dale's voice remains completely unyielding, leaving absolutely no room for any negotiation. For the proud knights of Saxon, his command is more absolute than any ancient custom, and they prepare to execute the prisoners. Milvis looks up in pure fury, cursing Dale as a filthy brat. He lunges forward in one final desperate charge, screaming, he will not go down this easily. But the Saxon knights instantly block his path, running him through with multiple heavy spears. Milvis collapses back onto his knees, spitting blood as his life quickly begins to fade away. Dale slowly walks over, leaning close to the dying commander's ear and whispering his old hero name. He quietly asks Milvis if he remembers his death, leaving the general completely dumbfounded. With a terrifying, malicious smile, Dale whispers he vividly remembers seeing Milvis's face on that fateful night. Milvis's mind is flooded with a terrifying flashback of the exact day the hero Han Sung was betrayed and killed. He remembers standing right behind Count Brandenburg as the general drove his holy sword deep into the hero's back. Dale looks down at him, grabbing him by the hair and repeating his question, asking if he finally remembers his death now. Milvis is shaking in absolute mind-numbing horror, finally realizing this child is the reincarnated soul of the legendary hero. He lets out a final gasp, asking if the hero really managed to claw his way back from the grave. Before he can even finish his sentence, Dale's dark shadow magic completely engulfs his body, dragging his soul straight into the dark void. Dale merely replies with a cold, silent yes, as the light finally leaves the general's eyes. Dale stands under the brilliant sunset, letting out a soft sigh and thinking to himself that only now does he feel even a little bit relieved. Our scene kicks off right in the middle of a brutal struggle, where knights are getting violently knocked off their horses in a massive clash of steel. Philip can only watch in absolute horror as his entire defense completely crumbles before his very eyes. The realization of his impending doom hits him like a literal truck, and he completely freezes on his horse. He is sweating bullets, muttering in pure despair that by the time he finally came to his senses, they had already lost the war. Their right-wing cavalry is completely crushed, and Sir Milva's alongside all the other elite Aura Knights are completely dead. With their left wing breached long ago, the Black Cavalry has completely surrounded their main force, leaving Philip to curse in silence as he desperately tries to flee. He clutches his head as he experiences a vivid, terrifying flashback of Dale's cold, mocking smile, frantically wondering why that kid's face continues to haunt him. SFX, Vine Boom. His panicked knights surround him, desperately begging young Master Philip to make a final decision. They scream, they cannot afford to lose like this, but Philip is way too far gone in his madness to listen. He draws his sword, screaming at his men. They will fight until the very end because their proud order will never kneel. His knights try to protest, warning him a final charge will only lead to total annihilation. But Philip merely yells back, demanding to know if they dare disobey his orders. With absolute madness in his eyes, he orders a final suicidal charge straight into the enemy lines. But the very moment he charges, his horse is instantly cut down, sending him crashing hard onto the dirt. He cowers behind a shield, screaming at his last remaining knight to protect him while whimpering that he just wanted to enjoy more wine. He looks up at the sky in pure despair, crying he wanted to die peacefully in a warm bed, not on a cold, bloody battlefield. As the sunset paints the sky in shades of deep red, the battle officially comes to a quiet end. Dale's commander happily reports everything has gone exactly according to his brilliant strategy. A tied-up Philip is dragged through the dirt and thrown right at Dale's feet, screaming at the guards to let go of him. Dale looks down at his pathetic prisoner, noting with a cold smile, Philip really seems to hate the idea of surrendering. Dale mocks his grand speech about never being defeated, calling it a pretty convincing line for someone who spent the entire battle running away. Philip tries to bargain, sweating as he claims he only ran because he has a sacred duty to survive until the end, and Dale merely asks if that is truly what he believes. Dale's guard raises a heavy sword to end him, making the cowardly lord scream in pure panic to wait. This dude really thinks he is a main character who can magically turn a lost war around with a cheap duel, not realizing he is talking to a literal mass murderer. Philip desperately accepts the duel, shouting he will gladly stake the entire fate of this battlefield on a final one-on-one combat match. Dale's elite guard looks highly offended by the ridiculous proposal, but Dale calmly tells him it is perfectly fine. Our young master steps forward, calmly agreeing to accept his desperate challenge. Philip puts on a smug, greasy smile, thinking he actually managed to trick the kid into giving him a final opening. He lunges forward with his sword raised, laughing like a manic villain because he believes his victory is completely guaranteed. He thinks to himself a simple child could never match his vast experience on the field. He brings his blade down with a powerful strike, screaming at Dale to die. But with a rapid flash of light, Dale's sword cleanly pierces straight through Philip's heavy chest plate. Our boy is simply built different, and attempting a sneak attack on a legendary swordmaster was his absolute last mistake. SFX, Vine, Boom. Philip stands frozen in absolute shock, coughing up blood as he realizes his desperate gamble completely failed. He collapses onto the hard ground, groaning in absolute agony as his weapon falls from his hand. He starts crying and scrambling on the grass, desperately begging Dale to spare his pathetic life. Dale looks down at him with absolute disgust, noting Philip chose to live a pathetic life until the very end, and just like that, the Grand War officially ends. With the threat completely neutralized, the victory trumpets blow loudly to officially signal the end of the campaign. Dale rides his horse back into the ducal city, welcomed by massive cheering crowds who celebrate their victorious young lord. The commoners gossip about how the young master successfully executed a flawless strategy against the Empire's elite knights, leaving behind a mountain of corpses. But some of the older citizens whisper and worry, noting way too much blood was spilled in that battle for it to be a good thing. A dark shadow falls over the city, as a powerful cardinal wonders if the gods would truly have wanted everyone killed in such a brutal manner. The church is already giving him the massive side-eye, definitely not happy about a 10-year-old becoming a ruthless executioner. SFX, Vine Boom. Cardinal Nikolai warns that while the child's blade is pointed at the enemy for now, his extreme ruthlessness means he will eventually turn it against the church. But back inside the Grand Ducal Mansion, the massive double doors are thrown open, and a loud voice excitedly calls out Dale's name. Dale turns around in complete surprise, his dark armor clanking as he looks toward the entrance. His cute little sister Lise runs straight toward him with wide, joyful eyes. Dale catches her in a warm embrace, smiling as he asks if she missed him, and Lise happily replies she missed him so much. Sir Helmet approaches them, warmly congratulating the young master on his very first battlefield victory. Dale holds his sister's hand as they walk down the lavish hallways of the castle. Sephia and Charlotte watch him from the balcony, looking incredibly relieved to see their young lord return completely unharmed. Dale enters the grand audience chamber, preparing to formally present himself before his parents. He drops to one knee, formally reporting their absolute victory to the Duke of Saxon. The Duke praises his brilliant leadership, declaring this victory was completely made possible by the strong swords of House Saxon. He also extends his deep gratitude to Sir Bael for guiding the young master so well throughout the entire campaign. His mother Elena smiles warmly, telling her son he must be incredibly tired after such a long and difficult journey. She bids him to get some good rest for now, and Dale politely thanks his mother as he prepares to head to his room. Dale smiles happily to himself, feeling a deep sense of warmth and belonging he literally never experienced in his past life. He reflects on how several months have already passed since he was last in the castle, feeling like he finally returned to a real home. Meanwhile, Brandenburg is absolutely seething with rage back at his mansion because his entire plan completely backfired and his reputation is absolutely ruined. SFX. Vineboom. Count Brandenburg is seething with silent fury inside his dark stronghold. The surviving knights return to his office, and the general coldly demands to know where the hell Philip is and why only a tiny handful of them returned. The trembling knight reports their entire elite order has been completely killed, and House Saxon captured young Master Philip as a prisoner. He stammers. The Duke's forces are currently demanding an enormous ransom for his safe return. Brandenburg gets terrifyingly close to his face, his eyes glowing with dark anger as he asks if they shamelessly ran away to save their own skins after a crushing defeat. The terrified knight desperately begs for forgiveness, claiming he has absolutely no excuse for his cowardly behavior. But the furious Count orders his guards to drag them all straight to the basement dungeons, promising to make them beg for death instead. This legendary clash, which would later be known as the Black and White Turning Point, completely shifted the geopolitical balance of the entire continent. And from that fateful day on, Dale showed absolutely no mercy to his enemies, officially earning him the terrifying title of the Black Young Master. The story skips forward as Dale officially turns 11 years old, and his father welcomes him to celebrate his birthday. Duke Alan announces that at the upcoming official ceremony, he will formally appoint Dale as a Viscount of the Saxon territory. Dale looks up in complete surprise, his eyes wide at the massive sudden promotion. The young lord realizes that by granting him the rank of Viscount, his father actually kept his promise to treat him as an equal head of the house. Dale bows politely, expressing his sincere gratitude to his father. He then adds that as his grace's official representative, there is something highly important he wishes to do immediately. He explains that because of his ruthless actions on the battlefield, people are calling him a cruel monster who refuses to let prisoners live. The corrupt priests of the Imperial Church are highly displeased by his rising influence and dark magic. So Dale proposes to depart on a grand pilgrimage straight to the papal state of Sistina to officially resolve the tension. With a confident, bright smile, he declares he will personally shoulder the weight of the infamy he has sown, preparing to take the fight directly to his enemies. Dale confidently announces his departure on a grand pilgrimage to the papal state of Sistina, declaring his intention to personally shoulder the weight of his own infamy. Duke Alan listens in deep silence, processing his son's unexpected and highly ambitious plan. Honestly, the Duke is completely baffled, because fear is usually the ultimate tool for ruling a territory, and his kid is casually throwing it away. Alan points out that fear is a tremendous asset that cannot be traded for anything else, asking why his son intends to throw away such a powerful tool. But Dale confidently smiles, replying the faction he is targeting is more than worth the sacrifice. The Duke asks if he has a secret plan in mind, and Dale happily confirms he absolutely does. With a chilling, determined expression, he promises to make them an offer they absolutely cannot refuse. Dale plans to use this golden opportunity to get his hands on some legendary forbidden grimoires to massively boost his dark magic. He recalls the intense training sessions from a few days earlier, remembering how he woke up in a cold sweat after a terrifying nightmare. In his deep sleep, a massive glowing blue skeleton warrior appeared right before his eyes. The skeletal guardian hovered right over him, coldly asking if he remembered his own tragic death. Dale stared back, his eyes reflecting his inner turmoil as he acknowledged the dark memories of his past life. He clutched his chest in pure agony, violently reminded of the sacred creed to always remember death. He found himself floating in a dark, empty void, completely consumed by the abyss of his own mind. Snapping awake, Dale clutched his heart, desperately trying to calm down after experiencing that terrifying vision. He notes this dark pool was the absolute most terrifying scene he witnessed when he forced his mind world open to form his third circle. He sits in deep meditation, realizing that controlling your inner world is both the ultimate beginning and the absolute end for any mage. But he grumbles to himself, highly annoyed he is still tormented by loneliness and nightmares from his past life. He clenches his fist in pure frustration, calling his sudden weakness a pathetic and ridiculous spectacle. Dale resolves he is still lacking, and he desperately needs greater magical power to fully master his own mind world. He notes that just as a legendary knight must always have a trusty sword, a great mage requires a powerful grimoire. The story then takes us to the quiet borders of the duchy, where the peaceful landscape hides a highly dangerous situation. At the border between the Greenbelt and Parker territories, the lands are far beyond the reach of Duke Saxon's protection. For Baron Parker, who was previously humiliated and defeated by Dale, turning to illegal banditry was literally his only option left to survive. Hidden in the thick forest bushes, a group of corrupt archers prepares a deadly surprise, letting out a sharp command to shoot. A hail of sharp arrows rains down on a passing carriage, but the two cloaked riders sitting on the seat do not even flinch. The bandits quickly ride out on their horses, surrounding them and demanding to know how they dare cross Baron Parker's territory without asking. The lead bandit arrogantly asks what they are carrying inside their carriage. The bandits sneer. It is common sense to pay a heavy toll the moment you set foot in a noble's lands. The cloaked figure calmly reaches into his pocket, replying, they have indeed prepared a certain sum to pay their toll. The bandit leader smiles greedily, commenting, the travelers seem to know exactly how things work around here. Sir Bale hands over a heady leather coin pouch, and the bandits quickly grab it to inspect the contents. The bandits snicker as they open the pouch, highly pleased by the massive heap of glittering gold inside. Satisfied by their sincerity, the bandits wave them through, promising to let them pass safely just this once. The wooden carriage wheel creaks as they resume their journey down the narrow forest road. The bandits grin wickedly behind their backs, clearly planning to ambush them again further down the line. The travelers continue to ride quietly, surrounded by the dense green trees of the forest. But suddenly, another group of armed soldiers completely blockades their path, loudly ordering them to stop. This baron is literally trying to double dip on the tolls, having absolutely no idea who is actually sitting under those hoods. A mustached nobleman stands before them, proudly declaring, this is Baron Parker's procession, and ordering them to show some respect. The corrupt guards demand another toll, leaving Sir Bale to ask if they are actually being serious right now. Sir Bale pulls back his hood, pointing out they literally just paid a heavy toll to his subordinates, asking if it is legal to collect twice. The guards burst into roaring laughter, calling his claims complete nonsense. They mockingly claim they have never met before, sneering they are law-abiding citizens who always follow the Empire's rules. The mustached baron steps forward, ordering them to hand over all of their valuables if they value their lives. He proudly boasts he is Baron Parker, the legendary hero who supposedly turned the tides in the recent border war. Sir Bale and Dale literally cannot help but laugh at his ridiculous, fabricated tales of heroism. Dale pulls back his hood, letting out a cold, chilling chuckle as he repeats the Baron's claims of being a great hero. Baron Parker's expression completely freezes, his face turning pale as he finally recognizes young Master Dale. The terrified guards panic, stammering in absolute shock as they realize the black young master is standing right in front of them. The Baron frantically tries to calm his men down, screaming, there are only two of them, so this is still a fight they can win. The archers quickly line up on the cliff, aiming their bows straight down at the carriage. Sir Bale calmly asks for Dale's orders, and Dale quietly replies, it is time for their little act to officially end. The desperate Baron screams at his archers to kill them all immediately. A massive barrage of sharp arrows rains down on them with incredible speed, but Sir Bale easily deflects every single incoming projectile with a fluid wave of his sword, his movements looking completely effortless. Wielding his sword covered in a dark purple aura, Bale formally acknowledges his young master's command. The archers look on in absolute horror as their arrows are casually knocked away like annoying flies. Before they can even reload, Sir Bale leaps straight into their ranks, his sword moving like a flash of lightning. The bandits scream in pure agony as they are easily sliced to pieces in literal seconds. Sir Bale stands calmly in the clearing, keeping his eyes firmly locked on the remaining targets. The survivors fall to their knees, desperately begging for mercy. Baron Parker is shaking like a leaf, weeping in pure terror and crying this cannot possibly be real. The corrupt noble drops to his knees, begging the young master for forgiveness and swearing his lifelong loyalty to House Saxon. Dale looks down at him with a terrifying, malicious smile as Parker desperately begs for the mercy of the sister goddess. With absolute coldness in his eyes, Dale simply asks why on earth he would ever do such a thing. The story explains Dale casually dealt with countless corrupt robber nobles and bandit knights as he continued his journey across the central continent. Several weeks later, their boat quietly travels down a beautiful, peaceful canyon river. Sir Bale points toward the horizon, reporting to the young master they finally arrived at their destination. Rising from the cliffs is a majestic, glittering white cathedral city, looking incredibly peaceful. Dale looks at the papal state of Sistina, the city of the Holy See, calling the peaceful appearance completely absurd. He notes while he officially claimed to have come on a peaceful pilgrimage, the true word that fits their arrival is absolute judgment. Dale and Sir Bale arrive at the massive double doors of the cathedral, escorted by the temple guards. Dale looks incredibly calm and composed, keeping his absolute cool as they prepare to meet the church leadership. The doors are thrown open, and they enter the grand hall to formally present themselves before the highest authority. Cardinal Nikolai greets them with a warm, false smile that is clearly hiding a very dark agenda. Dale immediately recognizes him as a powerful sixth circle white mage who stands at the very pinnacle of the goddess's faith. The creepy cardinal speaks from his grand throne, noting he heard an incredible amount of blood was spilled during Dale's recent battle. Dale plays right along with his meek child act, claiming the sacrifice of the St. Magdalena Knights is truly regrettable news. He bows his head, falsely claiming his poor judgment caused far more sacrifices than necessary. He claims that to atone for the spilled blood, he chose to conceal his immense strength and embark on a quiet pilgrimage to their holy lands. Nikolai watches him closely, thinking despite the rumors of Dale being a legendary genius, he is still just a naive child feeling guilty over a battle. The cardinal is highly pleased, believing the young master is a weak and easily manipulated brat. He smugly claims the goddess's mercy is open to everyone, and there is absolutely no sin in this world that cannot be washed away. Dale remains silent for a moment, letting the heavy words hang in the cold air. But suddenly, our boy looks up with a cold, piercing glare, asking the cardinal if that is the exact same reason he sold the goddess's nation to the empire. SFX, Vine, boom. Oh, the absolute look of sheer panic on this old man's face is priceless, because Dale just dropped a massive truth bomb right on his head. Nikolai's fake smile completely vanishes as he sweats in pure panic, stammering the young master's joke has gone way too far. But Dale does not let him off the hook, explaining right before the state was forcibly annexed, the 12 cardinal bishops did everything they could to betray the pope. He points out the cardinal himself was present, while the previous pope absolutely refused to accept the empire's treaty. A flashback reveals that because of the cardinal's betrayal, the pope was brutally assassinated by the empire's hunting dogs. The previous pope was stabbed to death in cold blood, paving the way for the church to become a corrupt puppet of the imperial forces. Dale asks him point blank if the goddess also managed to forgive his personal sin of selling out his own country just for a fancy title. The cardinal is absolutely seething with rage, his face completely contorting in pure hatred. He slams his fists down, screaming. Dale crossed a massive line by speaking forbidden truths out loud. He unleashes a powerful wave of light energy, mockingly asking Dale if he really believes the goddess will protect a dark warlock like him. But Dale stands completely calm, pointing out killing a mere proxy of the Duke will not solve his massive political problems. He calmly states they did not travel all this way to expose the church's disgraceful secrets, but rather to collect the heavy price of their silence. Nikolai freezes, sweating profusely as he realizes he has been completely cornered by an 11-year-old child. The cardinal closes his eyes in deep frustration, realizing he has absolutely no choice but to negotiate. The room falls into a tense silence as they prepare to settle their contract. Nikolai grinds his teeth, coldly asking what Dale actually wants from him. Dale lets out a creepy smile, demanding full access to the secret forbidden archives located deep beneath the cathedral. He demands absolute permission to access the Library of Hell whenever he wishes, leaving the cardinal completely dumbfounded. The legend says at the lowest level of that dark dungeon lies the most horrific grimoire in the entire world, the Book of the Black Goat. Dale slowly walks down the dark stone stairs carrying a small lantern, his shadow stretching ominously across the cold walls. The cardinal warns him no matter what goes down inside that dark library, the church will absolutely not intervene to protect him. He sternly warns Dale he may only bring out a single grimoire, as taking anything else is strictly forbidden. Dale agrees to the terms, swearing upon his family name to keep the church's disgraceful secrets forever hidden. They reach out their hands to formally seal their sacred pact. Suddenly, a massive angelic figure appears right above them to witness their blood contract, officially activating the magic giyas. Glowing golden chains wrap tightly around Dale's chest as the magic collateral is established. The contract successfully binds both of their hearts together, leaving absolutely no room for betrayal. Dale walks down into the darkness, fully knowing the contract will instantly burst his heart if he speaks, but he is completely unconcerned. He stands before a massive, heavily locked gate that serves as the official entrance to hell. A creepy inscription on the stone wall warns travelers to abandon all hope once they enter. Dale slowly pushes the heavy double doors open, and a violent wave of dark energy immediately spills out. He steps inside the colossal underground library, the stone bookshelf stretching high into the ceiling. He looks around in pure amazement at the massive collection of dark wisdom stored inside. He notes this place is not called hell for nothing, as the entire dungeon is filled with unstable and highly dangerous magical artifacts. All of the forbidden books stored here are uncontrollable treasures that brought total disaster to their previous owners. But Dale knows just as a famed knight needs a master-crafted blade, a great mage requires a legendary grimoire to reach his full potential. He concentrates his power, searching for the exact book that contains the dark contracts he desperately needs. Suddenly, Dale stops in his tracks as a massive dark shadow emerges right from the bookshelves. A terrifying group of ghostly guardian knights on horseback appears to block his path. Dale sighs in annoyance, noting for people who preach about holy light, they certainly have zero hesitation using corpses for defense. The ghostly guardians let out a terrifying screech, raising their rusty swords and charging directly at him. A giant spectral blade swings down with enough force to completely shatter the stone floor. But Dale easily slides underneath the strike, his movements looking like a fluid, high-speed blur. Since there are absolutely no eyes watching him in this dark dungeon, our boy does not need to hide his legendary combat strength anymore. He activates his magical circles, his eyes glowing with dark purple energy as he prepares his spell. He unleashes a powerful blast of shadow bullets, completely engulfing the charging knights. The guardians are instantly turned to ashes, and Dale smiles to himself, thinking how nice it feels to finally use his full strength without hiding. Dale draws a sharp ritual dagger, preparing to perform the final blood sacrifice to summon the beast. He stands ready in the center of the room, preparing to activate the legendary contract. He slices his palm, letting his fresh, magic-infused blood drip onto the stone floor to declare his lineage. He chants the summoning spell, ordering the black goat of the forest to appear and fulfill their ancient contract of darkness. Suddenly, the blood on the floor starts glowing with an intense red light as a terrifying energy fills the room. Disembodied evil voices echo through the quiet library, marveling at the sheer incredible power of Dale's blood. The dark entities literally fight among themselves, desperately begging Dale to choose them as his main contractor. A massive wave of red magical energy explodes around him, completely pulling him into an entirely different dimension. Dale opens his eyes to find himself standing in the middle of a massive bloody battlefield completely covered in endless corpses. He looks around in pure amazement, wondering if this is the legendary world stored inside the forbidden grimoire. Suddenly, a massive hooded shadow figure wielding a giant scythe rises straight from the sea of blood. The moment you realize you just summoned the actual Grim Reaper, and he wants to make a contract to slaughter all of your enemies. SFX, Vine Boom. The terrifying shadow beast looms over him, promising to hold a grand festival in an ocean of blood if Dale agrees to sign the contract.